What is the perfect movie franchise? Does such a thing truly exist? The License to Watch podcast sets out to answer that age-old question. Join comedians Matt McGregor, Harris McCabe, and Colin Shaw as they dissect your favorite film franchises one movie at a time. Along for the ride is a different film industry guest for every episode. Listen as the boys play judge, jury, and executioner and decide which of your favorite movie franchises are worthy of a license to watch.
Hello everyone, Screenplay Archaeology host KiramidHead here. Before we get into today's episodes, I just want to get some intro stuff out of the way. First things first, we are now part of the Fandom Limb Media podcast network, so I'm going to link their site down below. And that's why you would have just heard a promo for another podcast, because they're another one of the shows on the network. And as per usual, if you like the show and you'd like to know more, you can check out our social media pages on Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, and even Instagram now. The show also has a Patreon if you're willing to gift money, but you don't really need to if you don't want to. And we also have a Discord server, which you can join if you want to chat with, the group members there. So that link is going to be down below as well. So yeah, sit back, guys, and enjoy the show. All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Screenplay Archaeology podcast. I'm your host, KiramidHead.
And I am your co-host, Jake Mara of Hot Quality Content Fame and Glory.
Your less good co-host. Bringing an inside joke.
Understandable. I am from the hit YouTube channel Hot Quality Content. We're almost at 1,000 as of this recording. We're very excited to maybe monetize, but a big celebration when that happens. But yeah. We are so close, and the reason that KiramidHead and I are so closely connected, as for this show specifically, is because we both share a passion and or hatred for various Universal monster movies.
It's a mix of both.
Yeah, on our channel we do commentary reviews where we commentate on a movie, edit together the highlights, and upload it, and we happen to do every single Universal monster series. And oh my god, that just wild. But then I found out that you, yourself, have done plenty of episodes on the subjects as well, and you deeper into this kind of stuff. So figured, you know what? Let's go into it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I forget where I found the link, but someone linked the Dracula playlist. Someone linked that somewhere, and I went, okay, I'll watch this. I'm like, okay, I'm sticking around. But so the thing is that we're talking about all this Universal stuff because we're covering a Universal script. We're covering the Dark Universe reboot script of Van Helsing.
Yup. KiramidHead linked this to me, and oh my god, I took a night off from what I was doing, and I just tucked right in, and oh god, it is oddly enough not what I thought it would be, but in some regards, it's exactly what I feared it would be. So it's a mixed bag, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, and so in terms of background, I don't want to get too deep into the Universal monster because, like we said, there's hundreds of fucking movies, depending on what list you look at. I have the 31 movie box set.
Oh, do you? Yeah, I figure you would.
And then, so pretty much where this all really starts is the fact that Universal has been trying to remake their monster movies for decades at this point. You have Creature from the Black Lagoon, which has been going since 1981. You have Bride of Frankenstein, which has been going since the early 90s. The Mummy fucking sat in development hell for at least 10 years. Or was it been 12 years? Because I think they started that in 87 and went through 6 different versions before Stephen Sommers got it going. And Wolfman is weird because there's very sporadic mentions of a remake, but the only one that actually they seemed to do anything with was the one they actually made. And
yeah, absolutely.
And weirdly, Dracula as a standalone movie, they've also barely done anything with. They did the Frank Langella movie because because the play was revived and was very successful, that's why they did that movie. But no, so there was that, and then they eventually did Dracula Untold, which we kind of have to talk about as we go along.
Absolutely have to. We'll get more into it, but we have to talk about it midway.
But so, to kind of give this movie's background, it really just goes back to Stephen Sommers and the success he had with The Mummy, because The Mummy, I get the impression of, was a surprise hit that Universal wasn't really expecting anything of, because they were almost shocked about it to the point where they called up Stephen Sommers and woke him up the morning after the premiere and said, we need a new movie tomorrow. So they rushed Mummy Returns out, and that was not good.
That was that, yep.
That's why the CG in that movie is so terrible, is because it was on a very rushed schedule.
It was, and look at like the time frame, like 1999, 2001, so like barely 2 years, and then the third one, which credit where credit's due, I think the third one's probably the best one. That's 7 years after Mummy Returns they made the third.
Yeah, I'm not into Tomb of the Dragon Emperor really.
I think it's probably the best one,
but we'll disagree.
Okay, fair enough.
But basically, he did those; they were very successful. He didn't know if he wanted to do a third one. Like, there's actually quotes of him going, like, I don't want to do a third one unless it's really going to be worth my while. It's really funny. I got some of this from the commentary on Van Helsing that he did, where he told Universal, I want to go make a small movie, and then really what he did is he sat down and watched all the Universal monster movies, took notes, thought about some stuff, and then pitched them Van Helsing.
Yeah. Okay, so if I could, like, dive directly into Van Helsing, I self-proclaimed am probably the biggest fan of Stephen Sommers' Van Helsing movie on the internet. I haven't found a bigger one.
No.
I have a drawer in my room labeled Van Helsing tie-in media, and then there is, like, the Murders in the Rue Morgue comic book tie-in. I got the PS2 game, which is not a good game, the novelization. I have all of the tie-in stuff to that movie. And for this show, to read the 2016 script with you, I finally opened the cellophane around the 4K Blu-ray. This all culminated, of course, in a video essay I made for the channel. It's called Why Van Helsing is Absolutely Fantastic. It's on Hot Quality Content's YouTube page. Just type in either of those two things. You're totally good.
I could link it in the show notes.
But it's a 12-minute long project that I, out of pure passion, had to make, just to get all of the reasons why I love that movie so much more than it deserved to be loved for the rest of the world. I love that movie to death, and they're all in that video. Now, I, of course, when guesting on this show, you gave me the option of, hey, so like billion unproduced scripts I have, and I looked through them, and I saw Gambit, and I was like, oh, he already did that one. But I saw Van Helsing for Dark Universe, and I didn't know it was written. I thought it was still, like, vague concepts, but they actually wrote this damn movie.
They had a bunch of them written, actually.
Really? Obviously we only have the one, but...
that's the only one I have. I know of at least two that are out there.
Really? That's wild.
That I just can't get.
That's fine. This is already like a gem.
But, the whole Stephen Sommers movie, I loved it when it came out because I was, like, 12 at the time. And I was all about those Mummy movies. And I was like, oh, the Mummy guy is doing all the other Universal monsters. Awesome. And at the time, I was like, yeah, this is great. And over time, it's kind of, the sheen has kind of come off. And I hadn't actually watched the movie in years. And I put it on before we did this. And I'm like, it's kind of fun. Could be better. It's got its moments.
Yeah, you can definitely tell, and I mentioned this in the essay, but like, you can definitely tell that the guy who made them wrote and directed this. You know? Like, it definitely has those same kind of, like, some of those shock value humor things where it's like there's always this one scene in, like, the original Mummy movie where the mummy yells, or one of the mummy henchmen yells at Brendan Fraser.
He yells back.
No reason, just goes, ah, and shoots him. And that's very much like the epitome of what Stephen Sommers does. So it has a lot of that. But I think it stands on its own and it works. But yes, like you're saying, another part of the reason that I love that movie is because, yeah, it's pretty much the only good House of Frankenstein movie.
Oh, definitely.
Like the other, aside from the comedy of Abbott and Costello, like House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula are terrible movies. Like, structurally and character-wise, they're just the worst.
I gotta say, about House of Frankenstein, I used to rent the Universal Monster VHS tapes from the video store. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know anything about what order the movies were supposed to go in or anything, and I pulled out House of Frankenstein, like, oh yeah, it's gonna be a Frankenstein movie. No. And like, it's like, oh, cool, Dracula's in this. Oh, wait, he's gone. And like, I'm waiting for the Frankenstein monster to do something, and then he dies like 2 minutes before the end.
Literally, like, I swear to God, the House movies are like remakes of each other, kind of, in concept, where even though Frankenstein is a big deal on the posters and the marketing, he shows up for the last 2 minutes and dies.
Yeah, and they're written by the same guy and directed by the same guy.
You know what? I'm not shocked to hear that.
And it's just... It was just the last gasp of how can we make a few more bucks off of these properties? Let's put them together.
Right, exactly. Like, hey, look, Frankenstein and Dracula's. Ooh, give us your money now. Like, goddamn, it could have been awesome. You know, and I know we have hindsight of like Marvel's doing this, Conjuring is doing this. We know how to do an okay cinematic universe. Even Sony is freaking doing this with Venom. So like, with hindsight, we can see how to do it like a successful way. But now it's like. Back then there weren't cinematic universe. It wasn't even a term then. I get it that there was like new territory, but you can still do a passable job. You can still try and make like a competent movie. And if they're all on the poster together, you can have them all meet each other at any point instead of killing Dracula off halfway through.
Except for the Mummy, because fuck him.
Yeah, fuck him, right? Yeah, he's not supposed to be part of this.
It's so funny to me, right, that the Mummy like was always like the B, C tier monster that even Universal didn't give enough of a shit about him to put him in the crossover.
Has like the most sequels and remakes.
Yeah, and because the Summers movie was hugely successful, it's like the flagship character now. That's why they went, we're going to do a shared universe. Let's start with the Mummy.
Yep, yeah, because people know and recognize that title.
And they didn't use any of Universal's actual Mummy characters.
Nope.
But,
no. But like, even if they had, I feel like it wouldn't have been good anyways.
But I mean, and Van Helsing had the huge advantage box office wise of the fact that it was like one of the first big things Hugh Jackman did outside of X-Men.
Right. And you mentioned the commentary. I also listened to the commentary shortly of the show, but apparently Stephen Summers hadn't even seen X-Men. He was like, oh, he was good in Oklahoma, so let's get him in here.
And he's like, oh yeah, let's get that Schuler Hensley guy too.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. I love that anecdote because it's just like, I want this guy from Oklahoma.
Yeah, and even as like a defender of the movie, I can still say like when Frankenstein first speaks atop that tower, his first line is "why," but he sings it is like "whoa."
Tony Award-winning Broadway actor Schuler Hensley. who went on to play the Frankenstein monster again in the Young Frankenstein musical.
That screwed with me. So I guess the guys who made the musical were like, wow, you were so good in Van Helsing, we're going to bring you back. You know, now that I think about it, it makes sense, because they saw Frankenstein sing the word why, and they're like, okay, this guy has vocal talent and played Frankenstein. Those are the two things we need in this play, so let's bring him in.
Yeah, but he's just not in the movie enough to the point where he's not on the DVD cover and everyone else is.
Right. He's I think there is a Van Helsing cover with him in it, and he's like on a rock and like way in the distance. He's like 10 centimeters tall.
Yeah, he might be on the Blu-ray cover, but the DVD cover is gigantic Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale, and kind of small Wolfman and Dracula.
Right, and there's a big castle behind them, and that's it.
Like, poor Frankenstein. Like, he's not even loved by the marketing.
Yeah, no, definitely not the marketing. Although, out of all the crossover movies, this one uses Frankenstein the most.
Yeah, true. Which is really saying something. But I mean, the Van Helsing movie it's honestly, the CG is not as bad as people make it out to be. It's not good. It's like 2004 year CGI, but like the CGI set extensions are actually amazing.
Right. Dude, like a lot of the sets are just blue screen, and they implemented those in, and honestly, you could have fooled me. Especially as like 2004 times when this wasn't, because like I watched the commentaries on my 75-inch 4K television with a Blu-ray disc, and like it obviously wasn't meant to be seen on like Ultra HD televisions because, you know, Hyde is looking kind of cartoony now.
Yeah, I mean, Hyde was always one of the weaker effects.
Right, exactly. And like I think that's their fault for biting off more than they can chew with like a giant CG head and face animation.
But I mean, yeah, and you have things where it's like just looking at the movie, it's interesting how the monsters are all really super melodramatic, and then Hugh Jackman's just like, "Hey, I'm Hugh Jackman." Yeah,
he's chill.
Like chill. It's the most weirdly subdued Hugh Jackman performance I've seen.
Right. Well, I keep imagining like, okay, well, if he kind of matched their cartoony nature, I think that would detract from it. I think one of the benefits is that he's so stoic. You know, he's like the linchpin of realism in this weird, crazy fantasy world that they just go all balls out with. You know.
It's a movie where it's interesting because you can see the passion all over it, even if there's like a million holes in it. And Universal very much wanted to make that movie a hit. Like, they were pushing it.
Yeah.
Like, hard. Because, like, with The Mummy, they must not have been expecting anything because there were no tie-ins to speak of until Mummy Returned.
Right.
And then Van Helsing, they do fucking everything. They do an animated prequel, which I also own. They did a comic book. They did slot machines, a video game. They were going to do a live-action TV show on NBC the very next season. And so Van Helsing comes out, and it's not a bomb, but it's not a hit either.
It made, was it 300 million?
Worldwide, though.
Worldwide, yeah. So it made technically a profit, and it made the studio money. But I think the studio was also smart enough to recognize that if they made Van Helsing 2, it would not be as successful. Because critics didn't like it, and the audience did not like it. Because nobody remembers that fondly except Jake Camara of Hot Quality Content.
Me, sort of.
You sort of, huh? I got a half fan.
I was a huge fan in 2004. Now I'm like, it's not the worst blockbuster I've seen. So they did Mummy 3, which was like, let's squeeze a few more dollars out of that Mummy franchise, and that was not a huge success either. Like, it made money, but it wasn't like a runaway hit like they were expecting. And then that Wolfman remake they'd been developing for a while, that came out and bombed spectacularly, so they went back to the drawing board again, and Dracula Untold happens, and that's a weird thing where it wasn't really part of the Dark Universe. It was more like they talked about maybe doing it, but it was made by different producers. It wasn't shot to be that, and then they did a bunch of reshoots to maybe make it slot in, and I guess Kurtzman just went, really, guys?
Dude, the reshoots, mostly, to my understanding, they added that ending where Dracula's in modern day, and he's like, let the games begin, I'm gonna be a Dark Universe man, and he walks out towards the day or something, and it's like, oh, okay, so you're literally just turning this into like your version of a superhero from Marvel.
Well, they didn't just add the ending. They took stuff out, and the Charles Dance character replaced a different character.
Oh, what was the character?
I've read a couple of drafts of the script. It was Caligula, the Roman Emperor Caligula having become a vampire, who was played by Charlie Cox. And then they shot it and went, oh shit, like, we have this other branch of Universal is doing a shared universe. Let's reshoot some things to make it fit in. And then for the next 2-3 years, Alex Kurtzman would give very evasive answers about whether that was supposed to be the start of the Dark Universe or not. And he would be like, maybe. And then right before The Mummy came out, he said, no, it's not.
Yeah, that was, okay, so big deal about that. Yeah, so you're right. He was definitely kind of tiptoeing, oh, Mummy is the real star. Kind of like how BVS is the real DCEU thing. Yeah, Man of Steel's first, but this is us doing everything all at once. So, but then, yeah, you're right. Someone asked him in an interview right around the time it was releasing, and someone asked him, Dracula Untold, canon or no? And without hesitation, he said no. So it's not like he had to dodge or weave the question. He was like, no, we're not doing that at all.
Where this starts out is that, looking at my research, is that in 2012, that was when Alex Kurtzman and Roberto Orsi, they got a first look 2-year deal with Universal to develop properties. And the first ones announced were The Mummy and Van Helsing. And so you had those early drafts of The Mummy where it was almost a completely different story, and that was being written by John Spates, and then that eventually became Mummy Impossible. There is no mention of a shared universe here at this point.
Right, but you gotta remember that they wouldn't announce that right away. And
True.
The other thing about that, too, is that if this is 2012 when that happens, that means that Avengers is blowing up the box office, and every other studio besides Marvel looked at that and went, oh shit, we have to do the same thing. There is a new business model. We now need cinematic universe. And Universal, of course, depending on how you argue it, could potentially own the original cinematic universe of kind of the Universal Monsters. So in that sense, I totally see Alex Kurtzman going, dude, I'm going to be the Kevin Feige. I'm going to be the second coming of Christ. I'm going to change the world. We're going to do Universal Monsters, blockbusters, live action, epic, super duper big budget. Everyone's going to love us.
Yep.
And that catastrophically, we'll get there, but yeah.
And what's interesting is that the writer John Spates was attached to The Mummy, and Tom Cruise was tentatively attached to Van Helsing.
Yep.
And even if they weren't necessarily pitching the shared universe thing yet, it feels like to me Universal's perspective on this was The Mummy and Van Helsing were the last things we did that made any kind of money at all, so let's focus on that.
You know what? I didn't even think about it like that. You're right. The Summers verse was the only thing that actually kind of connected and or kind of made them a profit, because Van Helsing, for everyone hating it, still made money, and all three mummies still made.
Okay, so that happened, and then in October of that year, what's interesting is that they were rumored to be talking to Rupert Sanders, who had just done Snow White and the Huntsman for them. And the speculation in the article is that they were maybe offering him this project because Snow White and the Huntsman was a surprise hit, but they didn't want him anywhere near the potential sequel because of the controversy over his very public affair with Kristen Stewart.
Right. That was a big deal. Yep.
And it says in this article that Cruise is attached to produce and star, and the story was penned by Worsi and Kurtzman.
That to me feels like, again, the studio is just simply looking for a director who can actually make the movie and not a director who actually cares about it. It's not like that director really gave a shit about the war or whatever of Snow White.
And so that takes us to November of 2015, and it seems like Cruise has definitely left Van Helsing, and he's moved over to The Mummy. He's in negotiations for that. Yep. And this is when they bring over John Spates, who wrote the early versions of The Mummy before it got completely written, and Eric Heiserer to write Van Helsing for the Dark Universe. And so what we have is a second draft, which is from quite a while later. Now, let's go over their IMDb pages. Looking at John Spates' IMDb, his first credit is for The Darkest Hour, which I've not seen, but I know the premise. It's the Earth gets invaded by invisible aliens.
Oh, I thought you meant the Gary Oldman Dunkirk movie.
No. This was 2011.
Damn. I think it's also called Darkest Hour, unrelated. Invisible aliens invade?
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds really dumb.
No, this is a brilliant movie. That's the next best picture winner.
Yeah, leaving out short films, but he did Prometheus. He wrote the version of Prometheus that was supposed to be like a direct Alien prequel.
Right, as opposed to the version that was like 1% an Alien prequel.
He has a writing credit on Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
Passengers, the Chris Pratt movie.
Yep.
Which was based on a script of his that was on the blacklist like almost a decade prior.
Was that movie good? I never saw it.
It has a bad reputation. The script was legendary for the longest time. Like that was like one of like the talked about like scripts that didn't get made. And then the movie came out and no one liked it.
Understandable.
And he has the story credit on The Mummy.
Yep.
Which his drafts are very different from the movie.
Yep. Okay. And
just coming up this year, he worked on Dune.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, there is a very funny story about why he got brought in to work on that. Because they originally brought in Forrest Gump and Benjamin Button writer Eric Roth, and he had turned in a script that was so ridiculously long, they kicked him off it.
Oh my god.
He said he turned in like a 400-page script or something. He was like, yeah, I write long scripts. Really, there's just a bunch of announced stuff left on his. There's Van Helsing is still on his IMDb page.
The fuck it is.
Justice League Dark, which I didn't even know he was attached to till I looked at this.
Mm-hmm.
And the pilot of Dune: The Sisterhood.
Yeah, I remember there was a big deal made because he obviously wrote Dune with that, but he he chose to leave Dune 2, the one that was in development that was happening, because he wanted to focus on Dune: The Sisterhood.
Okay, and so moving over to Eric Heiserer's IMDb page.
Oh god.
The Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Mm-hmm.
But he was working off of someone else's script on that. It's one thing that's important to keep in mind. It's never clear how much a certain writer contributes to a script until you actually look at the script, so I'm going to give him a slight pass on that.
Fair.
Final Destination 5, which it doesn't matter who writes them, those movies are going to suck.
Yep.
The Thing, the prequel.
Oh, okay.
Which I've still never seen. I saw your watch along.
Oh, good. I'm glad we got that you pretty much got the gist of it. You're fine.
Hours, the Paul Walker movie with his premature baby daughter on a ventilator in the middle of Katrina.
Don't recognize it at all. So.
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. Lights Out.
Oh, okay.
Arrival, the Amy Adams movie.
Damn. Okay. Good on him then. Damn.
Next up is Bird Box, which was a script that was it's one of those blacklist, bloodless scripts that was hyped for years, and then Netflix put it out, and everybody decided they hated it.
Which is weird, because that movie got a lot of hype behind it, especially after it came out. That was like a big deal for a lot of people.
And he also contributed to Bloodshot.
Yep. Oh, goddamn, okay. Yeah, no, Bloodshot's main problem is Vin Diesel, which has nothing to do with the writing. probably give him the overall pass on his filmography there in terms of just screenwriting.
So yeah, to get into the draft, the basic sort of synopsis before we get in, because I used to get crap all the time for not doing this, so I always try to remember to do it. Essentially, is that it starts out with Van Helsing as a kid in what they take the longest fucking time to say is 1990. And his parents get killed by monsters in Romania and maybe Dracula. It looks like Dracula is behind it, and so he grows up to become Van Helsing, IR Monster Hunter, you killed my father, prepare to die. And it's him tracking down Dracula and running into something else.
Yeah, okay. So when I first read the scene where all the monsters get together and around the parents' bodies and Dracula shows up, I assumed it was basically one of those, like, there was a scene where it's like one of every Universal, like a wolf man, an invisible man, a creature. I got the wrong vibes, but at the same time, do you blame me? Because this is like the Dark Universe, the franchise that made Tom Cruise walk through the mummy room with every Universal monster part.
Yeah.
I was expecting that in the script, and I assumed it was that, and it was not that, as I kid.
Yeah, so this is the version that would have been in the shared universe that was called the Dark Universe, at least up until, well, they didn't have a name for it until the movie was practically out, from what I remember.
Right.
Because there was a lot of hullabaloo over that, because they were apparently pissed off that Warner Brothers called the Godzilla movies the Monsterverse when Skull Island came out. And they're like,
right.
oh no, we want that. And then when they called it the Dark Universe, Warner Brothers was actually considering suing them because that was the title they wanted to call the Justice League Dark movie.
Right, but at the same time, Dark Universe is a very bad title for a Justice League Dark movie.
Yeah, it is.
So, like, kind of their fault. Plus, Universal, I see why they chose Dark Universe, you know?
So they can do the logo gag.
Yeah, logo gag. Oh, it really was a gag by the time you actually saw it.
And so the script it's a second draft dated August 1st, 2016. So we're well before the critical reception of The Mummy.
Yep.
Well before we even knew anything about The Mummy, even. Like, it was one of those things where it was
right.
like, you would get information in like drips and drabs. It's like, what are they doing with this movie? And they didn't release a teaser until December.
Right, but you gotta understand that, like, since this was produced alongside Mummy, you can definitely read, like, in the script, there are very clear, unbridled connections to 2017.
Oh, we'll get into that.
Yeah. No, I'm not, obviously not. I'm keeping it vague on purpose. But there is, like, it is very much a Dark Universe script. It is not anything else.
Yeah, it is. There's a very specific 5 pages of Dark Universe tie-ins.
Yeah, boy, are there.
And so it starts off it opens with, I'm reading directly from my notes here, with mythology professor Ian Van Helsing, which doing this with you just made that really funny to me.
That was amazing.
His botanist wife Eleanor and their 8-year-old son Eric. I'm like, okay, are you naming it after yourself?
Well, yeah, what a motley crew of people. Like, you got a professor, a botanist, and a child, and they're like going to like this evil like death folklore place. And it's like, none of them are prepared for anything. Like, none of them, I guess Ian Van Helsing, the guy, the dad, kind of understands folklore a bit, but not enough where he recognizes the Dark Universe world as a real threat. So that, to me, is a little confusing. How much research are you doing to the point where it's like, do you know that monsters are real? Do you think they're fake? Like,
He very clearly doesn't think they're real.
Right, so what is the book just like... Because the book is technically all wrong then if they're all fictional in his book, because they're real in this universe, so... That struck me as odd that they would do that.
And they're traveling by Land Rover into the Romanian countryside in 1990, which it takes forever for them to say that it was 1990, because it's very vague at first when this is set, to the point where they're saying the furnishings in the house are circa 1970, which makes sense, because an out-of-the-way place would be behind on the times, fashion-wise.
Fair enough.
But they should have given you a clue into what the time frame was before, like, the third act, I think, is when they say 1990.
Right, and I think that, like, I assumed that, because you're right, the script takes way too long to reveal the year. I naturally assumed it was, like, almost modern day, if not modern day, because why would you want to do a Van Helsing in the same time period as the other Van Helsing? Why wouldn't you want to make it more accessible to, like, a modern audience for Dark Universe, crossover, mummy, everybody, you know?
Yep. And so they're looking to investigate a nearby stone circle and stop at the cottage of a woman named Straya to ask her about it. And she's like, oh, I visit it once a year to bless it. But then she hears that the Van Helsings have disturbed 2 other sites with supernatural legends around them. They rang a bell and stole some dirt.
Oopsies.
And she insists they stay the night and sprinkle salt in front of every door and window, because apparently they're leeches.
Yeah, not to spoil what happens like a few pages later, but none of that matters or works.
Nope.
So, like, I don't know why, like, an attempt to do anything, like, whatever.
No, Van Erich has to sleep in a separate room. It's in her dead son's room.
No. Empty boxes and there's, like, pictures of her son. It's like, wow.
And Straya, his parents put him to bed. Straya hands him a blanket with symbols and sigils stitched into it, telling him to stay under it until sunrise. This blanket does. Yep. There's a really funny thing that happens with it in a minute.
Boy, is it! Yep.
And as it says it will protect him. And she also tells him not to answer any knock at his door or window before leaving. Mm-hmm. And little Eric wakes up in the middle of the night, hearing a noise in the hallway before hearing something knock at his window. And he sees a large humanoid silhouette outside, hides under the bed, grabs the blanket at the last second and hides under it.
Yep.
And the pale creature, we don't really get a good look at, crashes through the window. It lifts up the bed. I guess this guy doesn't need to be invited in. Well, he might not be a vampire.
Right. It's just a motley crew of like random monsters that are not the Universal monsters, but are also just in the dark.
It's Paul Feig's Dark Army.
Yeah.
And so, it lifts up the bed and it leaves him alone because he's under the blanket. And so he wraps his blanket. He looks at like his toy soldier and then wraps the blanket around himself like a suit of armor and bravely ventures out into the hallway.
Are you gonna mention the detail of the blanket that I think is just comical?
What is it? I don't remember.
I have the exact passage here. In the moonlight, the design is more visible. Ancient symbols and arcane wards woven in gold thread like tattoos on the skin of the blanket. Astute eyes will notice that one prominent symbol is the prodigium.
Oh shit! I missed that.
So one of the symbols on the blanket is Prodigium's logo. I didn't know they had a logo.
Yeah, I had to look because they mentioned it later, and I had to look it up, and I'm like, that's not a memorable logo at all.
I didn't know they had. I assumed that this script was written with the idea that they would make a logo, and they never did.
Well, there is a logo. It's on the Dark Universe wiki, which is devoted to one movie.
Yeah, I'm looking at the exact same one movie wiki. That's the logo. It looks like the Empire.
It does.
That's what a bad logo. It's so plain. Sorry, this isn't a graphic design bitching podcast.
We stole the Empire's logo and hoping Disney won't sue us.
Right, exactly. That's the reason why Disney's not going to sue. Warner Brothers will instead for Dark Universe.
And he finds Straya dead, her blood spattered all over the walls, and he sees some shadowy creatures dragging his parents away into the woods. And he pursues them, following their tracks. I have to mention this. This opening scene is very similar to the opening scene of the Uncharted script I covered a couple years ago. It's little kid Nathan Drake and his scientist parents. They're off on an expedition. His parents get killed, and there's even a scene of him hiding under a bed.
Damn. Well, I mean, that's not even like a script problem. That's a movie thing, too, where it's like every movie that has been made that tries to establish, like, oh, the kid needs a reason to be so motivated. Well, just kill his entire family.
No, it's just funny how similar the two scenes are.
Yeah, exactly.
And he pursues the monsters, following their tracks, and he eventually finds that the tracks lead to the stone circle in the woods they were looking for. And he climbs atop a boulder to watch. He sees a green bonfire surrounded by an army of the undead, and they're like various different kinds. There's like a guy who's floating around. There's a bear-looking guy we later find out is a were creature, and there's some other ones. It's Paul Feig's Dark Army.
Basically, yep.
And his parents are sprawled out next to the fire, and as the undead begin to move in on them, Dracula appears, making them fall back, and it says, like, we haven't met him yet, but we know he's Dracula.
Yep, absolutely. We already kind of spoiled it in the pre-discussion, but we mentioned how, like, Dracula Untold is a big deal in this story. I didn't learn that until halfway through the script, so right now, in the opening scene, I'm reading this just imagining, like, an interesting version of Dracula that wasn't that version of Dracula. Like, I imagine, like, I actually did. Okay, maybe benefit of the doubt. Maybe they have a new, interesting, cool version of Dracula they're going to give us. I got to give it benefit. So now that I know that knowledge beforehand, I'm now imagining Luke Evans in, like, that weird dragon armor walking out, and it's just, like, it does not have any menacing or imposingness to it at all. So
Luke Evans, I got crippled by Vin Diesel.
Literally. Oh my god. What a threat.
And I killed Smaug the dragon.
Oh yeah, good times.
That's Dracula, who's described. He's wearing like regular evening clothes in this scene, and he switches to a different outfit later on, which is kind of funny.
I don't get the outfits. There's a lot about the character that I'm gonna just dive directly into later.
Yeah, and so Dracula bends over his parents, and Eric's like, whispering no. And Dracula immediately hears this, looks over and spots the boy, locks eyes with him, and then Eric flees into the woods, throwing himself against a tree, covering himself with the blanket.
Yeah, and that, honestly, you know what? In hindsight, the one singular prop I'll give the script, that actually does tie in well, because in Dracula Untold, he does have, like, Superman's powers. So he can superhear the kid. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the whole Dracula Untold thing, I'll get into it as we go along, because we get information very piecemeal as it goes along.
Yup.
It's a very, like, loose connection to Dracula Untold. Like, it sort of is, it feels like they're writing it based on the trailer.
Yeah, I see that. And there's definitely things that, like, Dracula, I'm imagining Luke Evans' Dracula, is saying happened to him that, oh, that all happened off camera, by the way, during the events of the movie, haha. You know? Whatever.
And so we then cut ahead to Eric Van Helsing in his late 30s. They say late 30s, but they also say it's been 25 years later on, so if he was 8 in the beginning, he should be 33, which is early 30s, but there's a reason why writers can't do math as a page on TV tropes.
Yep, they absolutely do not give a shit. I mean, I'm sure that the Transformed writers all about that page.
Oh, yeah. And so, yeah, he's chasing a vampire through a different forest, which we later find out is in Switzerland. And the blanket is now the lining of his leather coat. And all I could think of was that line from A Charlie Brown Christmas, where it's like, what are you going to do with your blanket when you grow up? Maybe I'll make it into a sport coat. So yes, Van Helsing is Linus.
Oh, that's amazing. And also, like, because I caught the Prodigium thing, I'm just imagining, like, when he opens his coat, it's just very tiny symbols, but the Prodigium logo is big, like, front and set, covering his whole back.
Yeah, it's the lining of his coat, and it's also, like, he also has, like, stitched tons of pockets into it.
I love the pockets. I'm not even kidding. Like, that's the funniest damn part. It's funny, ironically, a little bit, but it also, like, I would want my Van Helsing to have, like, just shitloads of weird stuff that isn't even necessarily gadgets.
Yeah, he has, like, a magician jacket.
Yeah. It's really funny.
And there's, like, multiple scenes of him just yanking stuff out and, like, throwing it away.
Exactly. Now, you, do you have, like, the script in front of you? Because I noticed something really, which is that this scene, I think when he walks into there, it says interior dawn. And then, like, 5 minutes later, it's the middle of the night.
Oh, I missed that.
So dawn is, like, morning. Dawn is not evening. So, like...
They made a mistake.
Yeah, they made a mistake, and, you know, it means that when you're watching the movie, like, he walked in, 12 hours passed, and then he fights the vampire.
Well, I mean, if you're watching the movie, you'd probably just think it's the sun setting. You wouldn't think so. Yeah, they fucked up and said dawn instead of dusk.
Yeah, I guess so. It definitely meant dusk, so I guess it makes more sense.
Also, one thing that's really funny about this is that they put the word different in parentheses.
Yeah, they have some weird stuff that, like, they're telling, pretending we're the producer of the movie. They're writing things in here that are for us to understand a little bit differently than as if the audience would understand them. Like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so he's chasing this vampire who we don't get a good look at, and he finds himself outside a ski lodge in the middle of nowhere, and enters, finding it full of people. And there's, like, one woman there who seems to be in charge named Lily, and he's going like, hey, I don't want me to interrupt your shit, but, you know, someone here isn't quite human. Let me find out who he is. He pulls out a special dog whistle, which this was really funny to me. He pulls out a dog whistle that it blows a specific frequency that only vampires can hear.
Sure.
It makes everybody in the room go crazy, so everybody apparently is a vampire.
Right. And there's even, like, this kind of showed me his character. I assumed that he was a more serious individual, kind of like the 2004 Van Helsing, but he's like, one of you is not what you seem. He blows it, and they all kind of freak out, and then he, like, jolts a little bit, and then he's like, oh, all of you, damn. He has, like, a stuttering quip, almost.
Yeah.
And it's, oh, okay, so his character is like this kind of, not Spider-Man, but kind of like this weird, naive kid who's still trying to do stuff in his mid to early to mid 30s, I guess. So, I don't know. I think I'm not going to say it's a bad choice. I think it's probably, if anything, a better choice than making him as serious as he was in 2004's Van Helsing. But I don't know if they really... No, I do know. I know that they really don't do all they could with it.
Yeah, I mean, this script, like, I'll admit, the comedy in the script is not bad, per se.
And that's also one of the reasons that I don't feel like it's a Tom Cruise. They obviously didn't write it for Tom Cruise at this point, but, like, the way it was, like, kind of pitched in my head, at least with all the announcements, that Tom Cruise was originally this, it is not a Tom Cruise role, because Tom Cruise, I've never seen him in a movie where he's, like, bumbling and kind of almost failing at his job. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He eventually finds out that most of these guys, because they refer to Lily as mistress, and so he finds out that most of the people in there, they're not full vampires, they're just thralls. And it's a little unclear what the difference is between thralls and people who just are around vampires. So it's like they're partway vampires, but not really.
Yeah, I was unclear. I had to Google the word thrall, and I still wasn't able to answer that question, because I'm not familiar with it.
It's like a Norse word. It's basically like a slave.
Okay, so they're slaves to vampires, but they all heard the sound. So maybe they're...
maybe they've drank vampire blood, but they're not dead yet.
I'm going to say it's like a Redfield thing, maybe, where like they're servants to them, but like even then, they all seem pretty sane. Renfield's like going crazy, so I don't know.
Yeah,
what they want.
Yeah, they're like one step more powerful than whatever the henchmen were called in the Blade movies.
Yeah, but also not powerful at all, because immediately after he calls them Thrall, Van Helsing dispatches every single one.
Yeah, he spritzes them with a sprayer filled with holy water, and he gets out his dart gun, which has... It doesn't shoot wooden stakes, it shoots them full of like silver, garlic, and stuff like that. It's like little injection darts. And there's a line in this fight scene where he grabs his dart gun up off the floor and it says he fires point blank like John Wick in a nightclub.
Yeah, that was like your favorite line in the whole.
Yeah, it's the one I remember the most because it's just the most random.
Weird. Because like, you're right, at the time, this is after John Wick Part 1. There's not even 2 or 3 yet. So, John Wick the movie... It's got some great action, sure, but it's relatively tame compared to 2 and 3.
Yeah, true. And so I guess, like, John Wick was a big enough hit that the Universal guys were like, ooh, can we make this like John Wick?
Yeah, that's like all of Hollywood. Like, hey, that thing is good. This is basically their Marvel. So, yeah.
Yeah, so
I get that. It's weird to me that, like, because the point of the scene is to show that Van Helsing is so experienced that he can take out all these vampires. But what it says to me is that these guys suck.
Yeah,
and that's bumbling idiot who didn't even realize they're all vampires at first and stumbled can still take them out because they suck at fighting.
Yeah, and Van Helsing follows Lily upstairs. He kicks all of their asses like immediately. And he sets a magical tripwire made of chalk lines and a whiskey tumbler he puts on like the banister, which he actually caught the whiskey tumbler from a thrall he killed. It dropped from his hand. He caught it and then just kicked back the whiskey.
So I don't know. Yeah, I feel like you're getting to the same point I am. I don't know about you, but it feels like he's like inhumanly fast. Like, how did he even manage to pull this all off?
He's Brendan Fraser in The Mummy Returns, where he catches the knife out of the air.
Yeah, that's a Stephen Sommers classic for you. So yeah, like on that note, this is definitely the kind of scene that a producer would make big and stupid and escalate to like all hell of absurdity.
And when your producer is Alex Kurtzman.
Yeah, especially. But like, this is definitely like the kind of thing where it's like, as it reads, it's kind of awkward, and Van Helsing is like too fast sometimes with the villains that are also kind of shit. But like, if the producer is reading the script, they're like, okay, add more gadgets, add more craziness. I want sweeping camera shots where it goes up through the stairs and up Van Helsing's butt into his gun to fire the... Like, it's gonna go nuts.
That sounds like a Fast and Furious movie where
I'm literally picturing Fast and Furious style fight scenes for Van Helsing.
And it was the 2 main producers were Alex Kurtzman and Chris Morgan.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Universal Studios. So there you go. Fast and Furious time.
Yeah, man.
A lot on this show, apparently.
Yeah. And so like she attacks, and so like that weird tripwire thing, it alerts him when she tries to attack from behind. Their fight spills into a guest suite where Van Helsing spikes what looks like a flashlight into the ceiling, like when I was in elementary school and kids would like chuck pencils into the ceiling tiles.
Yeah, exactly that. And somehow it like sticks perfectly, which again, that is more Fast and Furious logic to me.
Yep, and it projects a seal from the Key of Solomon with a UV barrier, which traps Lily in place. And I actually looked up all these seals he uses over the course of the script. Most of them are fairly accurately used. This one, he says it's for the containment of evil, and I looked it up. And it's to draw the person you like to you, so it's basically a date rape pentacle.
Oh, God. You just said they were fairly accurate, and what the hell is this?
Yeah, like the other ones are, relatively speaking, like they kind of are in the same ballpark. This one's just like, nah, you're making shit up.
I mean, if I were writing the Universal, Dark Universe, whatever, I'd probably make my own symbols. I don't know if I draw on, like, real mythology with terms like... Because, like, symbols mean different things in different cultures, and, like, like you're saying, like, you might accidentally write in a date rape. Who knows? So, like, I'd rather just make my own prodigiums or whatever.
Yeah, and he tortures her with holy water to get her to reveal that Dracula is now in Munich. And Van Helsing pulls the curtains open, intending to let the sunrise kill her. And she's like, but you said you wouldn't kill him. He's like, the sun will. That's his I lied moment.
That's absolutely his, like, I'm not going to kill you, but I have to save you. Like, it's literally that. Also, not for nothing, but Van Helsing, that's a bad plan, because you're giving her all night and all day, just like the Kid Cudi song, to escape from this little confinement. And immediately, like 30 seconds later, she finds a way out of the trap. It's like, Van Helsing, this is your fault. But whatever.
Yeah, she takes off he leaves, and then she takes off her dress and somehow hooks a chair with her straps. Mm-hmm. And she pulls it over and uses it to protect herself from the projector. And so he's outside. She attacks him in the form of a flock of albino bats. That's our first hint towards Dracula Untold.
I didn't get the Dracula Untold vibes then. I thought that was just random.
And then changes back into human form, swatting the dart gun away and ripping off his jacket. And she's like, oh, you know good about your toys. And he just grabs a sharp stick off the ground and stabs it in her heart.
Again, the villains are just worthless.
Is that a conventional means of attack?
That's an excellent question.
A sharp stick? Because, that would kill me.
Sure, but no twig on the ground, I guarantee you, would be able to, like, kill somebody. Unless it was, like, a really thick, like, branch of a tree, daggered already, sharpened, you know what I mean? Like, if it's because it reads like it's a stick, like it's a literal twig. Unless literal magic is, like, caving her chest in so that you can shove the stick, like, I don't know. But to me, that was, like, the most wishy-washy kind of, like, yeah, he needs a way out, we'll give him this way out.
Okay, and then here comes, like, probably the weirdest bit of comedy in this thing, and the one that just made me kind of shake my head. He takes a picture of her corpse and saves it on his phone with all these other monster corpse photos, along with a few selfies.
Yep, absolutely.
How do you do, my fellow kids?
Yeah, there's 100% that. And there's even, and we'll get there, but there are scenes where Dracula does some similar things. It's like, imagine Bram Stoker reading that, you know? It's like, God damn it.
Like, I get why he would take pictures of, like, the monsters he's killed for, like, record-keeping purposes. Mm-hmm. It's the selfie joke that kills it.
Selfie joke, the roller coaster ride joke, like, he's a hip, trendy, relevant individual.
Which is real. It's really funny about this because he's totally not.
He's definitely not.
He's described as being like a barely hygienic hobo throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, the script goes out of its way to make him a hobo. Like, they're not even saying, like, that's not even like something we're inferring. They're saying it, you know? So it's really weird that the fact that, like, because, like, I get Van Helsing's like a monster hunter, not off financially, sure, but to me, it's like, why would anyone want to identify with this hero? You know what I mean? Why would you want someone to, like a kid? Why would a kid want to be this hobo man with weird pixie dust and a million pockets?
He's got all the Liefeld pockets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so he performs a complicated set of burial rites, which gets written out as a montage on the page to dispose of the body. He's making sure she stays down this time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But no, Van Helsing then returns to his caravan, which is parked by the side of the road, and drives off, making his way to Munich. So yes, Van Helsing is a scruffy hobo who drives around in an RV.
Yeah, literally. It gets worse.
It's funny that they just use caravan, which is the European word for it, which I only know what that is because of Snatch.
Really, I only know what that is because of Ian in our Passion of the Christ review. No, the Last Temptation of Christ, where he made a really vulgar sex joke and involved the word caravan. And that taught me the word caravan.
But okay, and so he once he gets there, he does the Men in Black thing, where he scans the tabloids for supernatural events, and he cross-checks them with lists of phenomena in his father's book, which he has kept adding to, like he's fucking Frodo adding to Bilbo's book, and determines that Dracula is indeed in town. And he has like a fucking wall of suspects in his room, like he's fucking McConaughey from True Detective. He's got like the big chart on his wall, and like Dracula's in the middle.
Yup, the crazy person with the red string billboard. Yeah, and every movie has that, yeah. Even, like, my favorite movies ever still have that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, what's weird to me is you mentioned the book. He still has that dad book that keeps getting revised. How many revisions to a book written by a man who didn't believe in monsters do you have to make to that in the Dark Universe? Because, like, remember we were talking earlier, like, the hell does Ian Van Helsing know doesn't think they're real at all?
Yeah.
And that book is just full of wrong information through and through. You know what I mean?
But all the information is helpful.
Yeah, I'm just imagining that, like, on every single page, Van Helsing has, like, a sticky note where he puts in, like, actually, this is real, and this demon does this. Actually, this is real, and this is how you kill it. Like, every single part is just revised completely.
Yep, and so, Where are we at? Okay, Van Helsing then notices that he's out of holy water, and he drives over to a church in the nightclub district to acquire more. Very Lost Boys.
Yep.
And he steals some candles and a candle holder, and the priest there, I don't even know why I wrote this much detail down about this scene, but the priest, Father Kraus, is like trying to talk to him, thinking he's a homeless guy. He's like, oh, there's like a shelter we run, you can get some food. And Van Helsing's like, maybe, what kind of soup do they have?
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna be honest, the soup gag kind of got me because it was like a little teeny little quip.
Yeah.
Where the scene goes, which I'm sure you'll get to in a second, it kind of lost me again.
Yeah, he takes the candle holder, and he somehow uses it to determine that the buried corpses are moving around in their graves.
Yep.
This is very Hellboy.
It's not even just Hellboy. It's like, did the script imply that the candle holder can be like a stethoscope?
It's what it sounded like.
They're made of like brass.
Like he sticks it into the ground and it catches the vibrations or something.
The term is 6 feet under. There's no way that through 6 feet of like ground you're gonna hear anything. I don't know.
It's a supernatural thing. Ooh.
Spooky, only candle holders in a church can detect it or something.
He then uses the holy water, which he tells Kraus, you can do a specific prayer to temporarily keep them down. He goes like, but the only way to do it is to get rid of this horse. Who's going to do that? Me.
Sure. I will save it. And there's another line like that later. Yeah. Oh, I'll see to that. Oh, I'll kick their asses. Like, all right.
And he uses the holy water. He puts it into this like divining device.
Yeah.
Along with a leech and some of his blood, and based on where the leech moves to, he goes in the opposite direction to try and find Dracula.
That's so weird. I don't know. Like, does that... Okay, so, like, they're trying to mix, like kind of low fantasy in terms of, like, oh, holy water does this, device does that, magic finger points to whatever, blood does this. But they're also trying to mix that with, like, MacGyver. And have him, like, jerry-rig his way into, like, these weird makeshift inventions. But, like, if half the stuff of the inventions are just elements of magic, does that mix? I don't think that mixes. I don't know.
I mean, it would depend on how it's done, I guess, how it would look ultimately.
Yeah, there's even lines later on where he's like, oh, curses have loopholes. It's like coding. I can hack the curse or something.
Oh, God, that was that line was terrible.
It comes back. It's more than once.
That idea wasn't the worst. The thing he does in that scene is not a bad idea. It's the way he talks about it.
Right, exactly. It's so, like, hip, trendy. How do you do, Philip? It's like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and then it points him to the shopping district where he comes across Catherine, who is a strange woman who is buying dresses for her employer. And he has a locket, which is like a little glass bubble with a finger bone in it. I think it's like the finger bone of a saint. And it acts as like a compass that like points towards where like a vampire or someone associated with a vampire would be.
So that's cool. That is an interesting idea. I will give it that. But the script doesn't really get into how it works. Is it just, like you're saying, is it just vampires or is it monsters? Because how do you define a quote, quote, monster?
Because some of the things it points to are not vampires.
Yeah. So, like, also in the dark universe, there's monsters at every freaking block. So is that thing just spinning in all directions at all points in time? Or, like, I don't get it.
Yeah, just imagine if you brought it into the Prodigium headquarters. All three rooms.
God, sorry, Prodigium. We're getting there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Prodigium does feature in this.
Yeah, boy, does it. No. So I guess, like, if I were giving notes on this script, I would say add a scene where he somehow enchants this finger to focus on a vampire. Just dip it in blood or something. I don't know. It
does sound like he just straight up robbed the Millhouse from the Constantine TV show at some point.
God, I got like 2 episodes in because this episode 1 was really cool, and then after episode 1, they didn't carry anything through and did their own separate thing on episode 2 and onward. So I just didn't get into it. Try at least getting to episode 4 because episode 4 is the best.
And so he follows her to a restaurant where he bluffs his way into the bathroom going like, do you really want to get into a fight with me, woman?
That's so funny because like the screenwriter clearly, I'm going to assume, has never worked in food service because dude, I worked in KFC for like 5 years. If somebody walked up to me and said that shit while being an idiot, I'd be like, get out. Like I wouldn't even be like, oh, I guess you have power over me because you're being angry. Like, no, this is my restaurant. You don't work here.
This gives you power over me?
Ooh, you've chosen death.
Doing my Bane, because, I mean, I've been thinking of Bane impersonators because of that one line from The Mummy, which is practically "You fight like a younger man."
Yeah. Oh, thanks for the Mummy remembering.
So he bluffs his way into the bathroom and he steals some silverware while he's on his way there. And he waits for Catherine in the ladies' room, and he can see from her reflection that she's not really a vampire and can still be saved, and he offers her a way out. And he fights off her bodyguard, and he uses a kind of magic firework that doesn't work at first. He uses two, and he has to shove the third one into his mouth. And that causes so much commotion that the driver sees them. And so Van Helsing and Catherine, they flee, at first heading for the caravan, but then the pinky bone thing starts spinning, so he diverts them to a nearby church for protection.
Yeah. Okay, the church scene, I have a lot of mixed feelings. I'll get into it.
Yeah, well, is it the vampire rules?
Somewhat. It's kind of about establishing things, but we'll get there.
And so Van Helsing quickly surrounds them with a circle of holy water and a special powder, which creates a circle of blue flame, and he says it will only hold him back temporarily. And there's a moment where Catherine is like, what do you mean him? But they're too busy, doing shit for him to pick it up.
Yep.
And he says, flee to the caravan as soon as I tell you to. That's when a swarm of black bats arrives outside the door and coalesces into a figure who slowly walks up behind Van Helsing. And it's Dracula enters the church, and he's wearing a red Chinese-style suit, and he has long fingernails.
All right, so I'm gonna. I have a little. This is the point of the script where I felt like the most. I want to say passionate for like multiple. So you don't introduce Dracula, the king of movie monsters, and then immediately introduce a villain more powerful than Dracula. Like, if the Universal monsters were like the Greek gods, Dracula would be Zeus, sitting right atop Mount Olympus. He's top dog. In every monster movie with Dracula in it, he's the baddest there is. Every Universal crossover, does the Wolfman control Dracula? Does Frankenstein kick Dracula? No. He's on top. So I'm reading this script, and Van Helsing does this little magic tricks and makes an anti-vampire circle, and the bats swarm, and Dracula walks in. Okay, boom. Awesome dialogue scene. I'm gonna give it credit and praise for like a couple pages. It reinforces what we already know, introduces the OG, Big Daddy Drac, and reveals little tidbits of their history as well. I love the characterization of Dracula in this scene. I didn't know it was Dracula untold at the time. I love the characterization of him. And he's looking down on Van Helsing as like a little Ted, and Van Helsing's mentally were like, oh, is that right or not? Is that true? Am I actually just over my head or not? That's pretty cool. What an interesting hero-villain dynamic. What a way to motivate them. And then Dracula gets upstaged by this nobody in a big dress who can use her powers in a church because her magic is older and better than Dracula's magic. So, like, at this point in the story, the way it's structured leads me to believe that Van Helsing and Dracula, like, team up Scooby-Doo style to stop her in this church, and that was really frustrating to me. So, I wasn't about this at all. That's kind of the point where I was like, oh, okay, this is I got kind of mad.
He's like, he walks into the church, he can't shapeshift because the holy ground, it reduces his powers.
I'm okay with that, because, like, in the Dracula book, like, sunlight never destroyed vampires.
Oh, yeah, I've read the book, yeah.
Right, so, like, his powers are limited in churches, his powers are limited in daytime, he has to keep the form he's in. That's all well and good, and actually, you don't see that representation a lot in Dracula media, where he has limitations in certain areas. So, that back and forth is actually really cool. But what you're going to talk about in all of 10 seconds, I'm not about.
Let me get through it.
Sure. Sorry.
He's impressed by Van Helsing's occult knowledge, and he has heard of him, the hunter. But then he's like, and Van Helsing goes off on this big speech about how it's like Romania 25 years ago, blah blah blah. I went and I learned all this knowledge so I could kick your ass. He goes like, oh, you're the boy. And Dracula's like, oh, I'm here to get Catherine. And you find out later it's because, like, she's very particularly, like, the kind of person he likes to feed on. He's after her, like, and he's not her employer. And he's just not at all impressed by, like, Van Helsing's badassness. He very nearly kills him. And this scene actually reminded me of the Van Helsing movie, because he swats the dart gun out of his hand and then swats away the cross.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Except it's not as he doesn't literally get staked in the heart, pull it out, and then grab the cross and melt it. And go,
Right, yeah. Exactly, with that goofy face. Because it's even Farmer's movie and everyone's like a cartoon character.
And that's when the church doors explode open and Countess Elizabeth Bathory, real historical figure, by the way, and Catherine's actual employer, who appears to have a history with Dracula, which we learn as the movie goes on, The driver and the bodyguard enter behind her, followed by 4 more minions who are referred to as Dead Men. Not the most creative name, but we find out what they are later.
Yep.
And Bathory just straight up dominates Dracula in the fight because she's not affected by holy ground. She answers to older powers.
Yep.
And she squirts an ink-like substance from under her dress, forming an evil sigil on the walls, sealing the exit shut.
Yeah, no, the way that reads is very disgusting and inappropriate. So, like, I don't know about that.
She squirts ink like a squid.
Yeah, literally, I'm just imagining her, like, just... It's just, like, going all over the wall. It's
Ew,
like, oh, scary.
Ew, you made me ink.
You made me ink, yeah. Literally fighting, you know. But, yeah, no, I hate everything about this. Everything.
I don't, but...
Okay, well, let me be clear. Like, the scene prior to Bathory entering, I was mostly on board with. Like you said, yeah, there's some corny lines in there. Like, your ass for 25 years, whatever. But I like their version of Dracula in this scene until he's immediately upstage and gets his ass whooped. And I hate the idea that Bathory could do whatever she wants in Holy Ground because she answers a different magic. That right there, instead of Dracula being like super duper powerful, but the power of like the Holy Grounds being like the end all be all for monsters, that just implies that you just need a better monster than Dracula. He's just not that great. And that to me, I hate.
Well, you see, to me, it is a weird way to introduce Dracula into your cinematic universe as a pseudo good guy.
Yeah. We'll get in. And I'm not entirely opposed to Dracula, not necessarily doing all evil things. He can be a normal character, but like at the same time, you give him the clout. He's Dracula. Like it's like if in like Superman's first movie, immediately like Superman's like brother, who's also a Superman, just kicks his ass and almost kills him.
Zod just shows up and goes, "I found you!
I found you!" Just like beats him down. It's like, wow, what a good Superman.
I found you! Come see Shape of Water! But, Dracula lets out a banshee shriek that, like, freezes everyone in place and tries to escape, and he never does this again. But the sigil, seals him in.
You're right. I never realized he didn't do it again. Because, like, again, I'm okay with introducing new abilities we didn't see in the first movie, because this is a hybrid sequel to Untold. But, like, at the same time, like, you're right. They never touch on it. And it's like, I hate, like, you remember Phantom Menace, like, the Force Quicken? Where, like, oh, we can move it, like, flash speeds once ever in 9 movies.
They did? I don't remember that.
So, in the it was actually the beginning of Phantom Menace, where they broke into that trade regulations boring place. And Liam Neeson says to Obi-Wan, he's like, hey, quick, use our Force Quicken. And it cuts to a wide shot, and they just Barry Allen away from them really fast.
I can't believe I don't remember that.
Dude, you rewatch it.
I watched those movies a fucking lot.
Yeah, no.
Way back then, because when I was a kid, I didn't give a shit.
Yeah, exactly.
So Dracula's trapped. Van Helsing grabs Catherine, runs for a side door, blinds a dead man with his dart gun, and then uses a mystic mandala he draws on the floor to make the sigil retreat from the door. And Dracula's like, oh shit, and runs out the door right behind them.
Dracula's like, oh man, I better get zoink scoop, let's get out of here.
And Van Helsing and Catherine, they drive away in the caravan and head for a gated mansion outside the city, and they check the pinky bone to make sure they're out of danger. And in the back of the caravan, he starts like melting down the silverware for his dart gun cartridges. And he talks about how like he was raised in a Romanian orphanage. He learned Latin from the priests, and he learned how to fight from the other boys because they're always trying to kick his ass.
I'm just realizing this now. This is modern day. What if the utensils weren't silver? What if it was just like that weird plastic that feels like silver, but
stainless steel?
Or it could have been stainless steel, which again has no magical significance.
Well, so I think steel might actually be good against fairies, or is that iron? I forget. But
no, you're thinking of iron.
Yeah,
I remember that. But yeah, no. So it's just I don't know. It feels like Van Helsing made a big assumption there.
And this is where we get Catherine's backstory. And she was the daughter of a once rich family. And it's really funny though. They're reduced to living in the carriage house of their bigger house.
Yep. Catherine's flashback.
Yeah, she gets a flashback. I really condensed this in the notes. And she ran away from home to avoid an arranged marriage. And she was approached on the street by Sybil, who's one of Bathory's companions, and offered her a job as one herself.
I do not blame you that you condensed this note part, because I'm going to be honest, as soon as I saw that it had voiceover narration while showing us on screen, I skimmed. I know. Read like little bits of dialogue and I was like, that's enough.
Yeah, you watch okay, guys listening to this, if you watch any of the hot quality content videos, the thing they hate the most is narration. Narration and text on the screen.
That's Ian specifically is just like the tour de force of like, oh my God, stop telling us.
And so, she was eager, she needed the job, so she was eager to take it, took it on the spot, and then later that night, she learns the downside, because Bathory was preparing to bathe in this special mixture where it's like 1 drop of the pink, blah, blah, blah. And the driver grabbed Catherine, held her over the water, and Bathory cuts her wrists to let the blood drip in. And the blood soon turned black and was absorbed into Bathory's skin. And this script has like some really nasty descriptions of bloodletting in it. Like, damn.
Yeah, like I kind of like that. If that's, again, if that is the kind of movie they want to create, where it's like oddly like dipping into that gothic horror and not afraid to lean in, cool. But the script as a whole doesn't lean in. It kind of backs out and goes back into that hee comedy. Like it kind of, it toes the line between like an action blockbuster and like a real creepy gothic story with all the blood. So stuff was cool to me, but again, very unfitting given the script.
Yeah, and it was, and I should point out the whole bathing in blood thing. Elizabeth Bathory was a real person who did allegedly kill over 600 young women. But the bathing in blood thing was a later embellishment.
Right. And like the way I saw that is like they're doing the same thing to Bathory in this script that Bram Stoker did to Vlad the Impaler, where it's like, yeah, he's a real guy. Yeah, he stabbed people through the head and stabbed people in a lot, but like he wasn't actually a vampire to our knowledge. Maybe he was, but Bram Stoker took that real character and kind of modified him into a quasi-dark fantasy character. And this script is doing that with Bathory. And I see why they're connecting it in that regard, because it's kind of what Bram Stoker did to him. But for reasons that we have not gotten anywhere near, I'm not really on board with the Bathory.
Yeah, and the Countess then visited Catherine later that night, saying she'd keep her alive for the time being because she was too beautiful to kill. And basically, she's basically sleeping in a closet like she's Harry Potter.
Yep.
And the next day, she told Catherine exactly what her nightmares were, which Van Helsing recognizes as a special kind of magic called hemomancy, which links the two of them together. And this went on for about 2 years.
Yep. Yeah, hemomancy. It's a blood villain. It reminds me so much of... You just mentioned Blade earlier, but remember the cut villain of Blade, instead of being the Deacon Frost character? Well, it was Deacon Frost.
Yeah, it was the giant blood hurricane.
It was a big blood tornado, and it's like, I get it, because it's vampires, I understand what you're trying to do, but like it comes across as like... So I feel like, given that, this script, when being produced and being like, oh, let's make it bigger, Fast and Furious, is going to become the blood tornado to an extent, where it's just really corny and stupid. Like, this is one step removed from, you know how Dracula Untold had a fist made of bats that
yes.
An army? This is like one step removed from Bathory having a scene where she has a big blood fist that just punches Van Helsing. I feel like we're so close to like that happen. It doesn't happen, but I feel like it would in development.
Yeah, because in Hollywood, some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
Ice skate uphill, baby. Yes. Woo! That's the best line in that whole trilogy, right?
But then Van Helsing, and it was an ad-lib too, but now Van Helsing, having heard her story, he offers Catherine a medallion which has the 6th pentacle of the sun from the Key of Solomon, and he says it will keep her from Bathory's sight even while they remain connected. I looked it up. It's not quite that, but it is supposed to render the wearer invisible. So it's kind of in the same ballpark.
Okay. All right. You know what? Half points for that one. That's not bad. And again, like, a screenwriter doesn't have to follow, like, perfectly one-to-one with ancient cultures, because ancient cultures are still a little bit of a mystery to us.
Yeah.
So I totally...
Just get into the ballpark.
Right, yeah, at least get close, you know? With the date rape drug being the stupid little whatever on the blanket, I don't know. Not a fan of that one. On the projection on the ceiling, I should say.
Yeah, and so they then leave the Van Helsing van, and then they head for a different mansion a mile away atop a hill. And oh boy, we're getting to it.
We're getting to it.
Yeah, they have to break in through a side window with Van Helsing subverting a magical set of symbols. I actually thought this was really cool, the idea that, like, the home security would be magic.
Right, yeah. That, again, like, the idea of an organization that tracks and protects people from monsters and stuff like that, that's super cool. But by that same token, because you just mentioned how Van Helsing broke the security of, like, moving the symbol or changing the symbol or whatever.
With his chalk.
Yeah, just chalk. By that logic, any guy at all, even monster with knowledge, could just erase a symbol and draw a new one.
Yeah.
Because again, like we mentioned at the beginning of the movie, the lady at the beginning, what was her name? I forget her name, but like the lady with the dead
Lily.
son. Lily, not
No,
Lily.
Straya.
Straya, yeah. Oh, I better put salt everywhere and give you this magic blanket and put everything everywhere and make sure everyone's safe. And then they just walk in the house. What the hell was all that? What did you even do?
Yeah, and it was a cool idea, the idea of like the magical seal that like makes the window feel scalding hot to the touch.
Right. And there's some scalding hot touch magic too, unrelated to this in the script, which is
Oh, yeah.
So I like that. Their world buildings, kind of. They're dipping their toe into world building.
They're trying. They do it better than The Mummy did.
2017? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like
still definitely a weird, like, cousin child of The Mummy.
Yeah, what we're getting in a minute is, like, the better version of that bizarre middle act.
Absolutely. You're totally right with that.
Yeah, and so they...
build by having a character just monologue.
Yeah. They find themselves in a room full of artifacts, and Van Helsing's just, like, stealing shit as he walks by. And he explains that the house belongs to a secret society that studies monsters, and we see the Prodigium's logo on the rug. Okay, so I did note this down, because it says it's also on his jacket.
Yep.
The Prodigium has their own merch.
Right, exactly. They gotta market themselves, like every secret organization. I first noticed that was a trope in Solo, a Star Wars story, because Crimson Dawn... That was the first time it stood out to me, because in Crimson Dawn was the organization that Darth Maul leads, and it's a very secret underground organization that everyone a part of has, like, a burn tattoo or a ring or, like, the pamphlets and brochures and hats that all have the logo on it. It's like the Spectre problem in the movie Spectre.
Oh, God.
Like, remember that? How it's like a massive uprising organization that, like, is controlling so many pockets of every world government. But everybody part of it wears an octopus ring. Like,
some of them wear the same octopus ring.
Oh, they wear the same, like, and then Bond is, the way he finds out is that he takes that helicopter crash and he's like, oh shit, this guy's got an evil secret organization ring. I better look into.
He's got their decoder ring.
The decoder ring. It's like, damn it.
Spectre
you couldn't make it like a regular normal wedding ring looking like, and then it has like a secret code underneath. That would be actually pretty clever. But yeah, so
my fucking God, Spectre.
Right. Like, the point is here that Prodigium is just like, oh, we're
Spectre.
Underground, we're protected from... Spectre Prodigium is like, we gotta protect from monsters and all this stuff. We're gonna put our big logo on our rugs. We're gonna put it on the blankets. We're gonna put it on our wall sigils. We're gonna put it on our rings, probably. I'm sure there's a Prodigium ring somewhere in that Mummy movie. Again, I'm not going to it.
Yeah, I mean, it probably wasn't there.
Yeah, statistically, probably.
Yep, and so Van Helsing, he mentions that he got kicked out of the Prodigium for killing too many of their subjects. I find that hilarious that he was too extreme for Prodigium. The guys who their first response to the Mummy was to shoot her full of harpoons and then flood her blood system, her circulatory system with mercury.
Oh, yeah, that's like straight up torture to anybody, no matter if you're a monster or not. And it's like, yeah, we're Van Helsing killing our subjects, get him out. I guess it makes sense because you look at it in the light of, and they didn't intend this, but if like Prodigium is like so fucked up that they're like, we want to torture every single monster, but Van Helsing just puts them out of their misery. Get him out of here. You know
that almost feels like what they were going for in The Mummy, because they're just dicks the whole movie.
I know, they're the worst characters. Well, no,
I like Tom Cruise, and that character just no. But no, it's just really funny. So I'm guessing the vampire head in the jar was the one. I guess Van Helsing killed that guy while he was under Prodigium protection.
Dude, imagine if freaking 2016 Van Helsing script gets made. That means Dracula Untold is canon, which means that in 2014, Dracula shows up modern day. Let the games begin. In less than 3 years, he's dead in a jar.
If that is Dracula.
That straight up Dracula's just dead. He's like, I'm going to be back. I'm going to be the coolest guy ever. Dead. Jar. Done.
If that even is supposed to be Dracula and not just some random vampire.
Maybe it's a rando. Maybe it's Bathory. Who knows?
You got the Gillman hand next to him, which would be interesting if that was meant to be the same fossil hand from the original movie, but I doubt it.
Yeah, because they said it's canon, but it's not, because Prodigium never makes reference to mummies having emerged before, which is weird because it's a sequel to the 3 Brendan Fraser mummies, where there are 2 separate mummies that rise, but no matter how you slice it, none of it connects, even though they won't.
And Jet Li, who they keep calling a mummy, even though he's not a mummy.
He's not a mummy.
He's a claymation man.
Look, he's a claymation man mummy. Okay, yeah, fair. It's just a title to
yeah. All right. So to get into the real world building here,
Yeah, let's get into it. Baby.
Right as Van Helsing is going to Catherine, like, oh, nobody's ever here. There's not going to be anybody. They walk into the library, and who do they run into but Dr. Jekyll sorting through an artwork portfolio, and this characterization of Jekyll is not at all the same as in The Mummy.
Dude, I like to imagine that this Jekyll is like reading the Book of the Damned that was on the shelf in Prodigium. In that movie. He's like, oh shit, yeah, this connects, haha. But no, I bought it as the same character, but the problem is I also imagined like Russell Crowe reading the script and going, are you sure? Like this is where we're going with this? Me here in Van Helsing the movie? We're gonna have like a dialogue scene where I'm in like a part and then nothing again. And I maybe threaten to turn into Hyde once a little bit and then nothing happens.
Yeah, what's really fucking hilarious about it is that Van Helsing pulls out his dart gun and Jekyll reaches for a letter opener. Like, he's such a wuss here, which he isn't in The Mummy.
Yeah, it's so weird. I don't know. None of this really, like... Ugh. So, like, the Jekyll character, them trying to be their Nick Fury, I totally see it, like, connecting, or trying, quote, quote, trying to connect with 2017's hit film, the movie that everybody... But it doesn't... So Marvel connected their characters in order to build to the Avengers. What is this building? What's the point of connecting the movies if they're not going to have this through narrative?
It's going to be the House of Cruise.
The House of Tom Cruise, who's the devil, kind of. Oh my god!
And then they could call it the Devil's Brood, which was the original title for House of Frankenstein.
That'd be really funny if Tom Cruise was starting the Devil's Brood with all the actors that they couldn't even get together for one for the Dark Universe. They're going to get them all in the same movie. Yeah, okay. All right.
Okay, Johnny Depp's going to be invisible. He's going to be we're going to pretend he's standing in this corner.
Yeah, how do you massive $100 billion blockbuster The Invisible Man? I just don't see it.
Well, you make him a secret agent.
Oh, you make him infiltrate things. Action like John Wick.
Like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Everybody's favorite. Hyde was also the Hulk in that, just like Van Helsing.
Yeah, although they get a pass on that because that's what they did in the comic.
Yeah, fair enough. But at least Hyde in The Mummy, who I also hate, is like the same size as Russell Crowe. He's not like 3 times larger than a human being.
Yeah, we'll have to get into that in a second. So they're Van Helsing and Jekyll are just circling each other, pointing their weapons at each other, and they're like talking back and forth. And he's like Jekyll offers Van Helsing a chance to return to the Prodigium. He's like, no, I kill all monsters, not just the ones you want me to. God, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. Also, like, the problem with that, too, is, like, the definition of monster is, like, so loose. Because the Invisible Man is a guy. And, like, is Van Helsing gonna go out of his way to kill, like, a serial killer? You know, because I would call that a monster, but he's not supernatural at all. Like, the definition of monster, like, if you're just talking like vampires and werewolves and stuff, like, well, is Jekyll really that bad? Because he's got his, like, injections that keep him a regular guy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. None of it really makes a whole lot.
Which I guess is why they put the very unstable man in charge of the secret society.
Yeah, that's a fucking grade A, brilliant move right there. Keep the guy who turns into one of the monsters to lead the anti-monster.
Yeah, and so Jekyll says that he's in Munich because some of his patients, whom we don't know who they are, his torture victims like Sophia Botella, they've had premonitions of a particular woman, and there's a picture of her in the portfolio, and oh no, it's Bathory, blah blah blah. And
right, dude. There's even a part, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a part where Jekyll says that line where it's like visions of a woman, and he's like, your father's book is a unique reference. I just imagine Van Helsing going, no, my father didn't know anything about it. It was like a fantasy book. He thought they were all fictional.
Yeah, it's the Tobin Spirit Guide of the Dark Universe.
Pretty much.
And so they're like, Van Helsing plays dumb and doesn't tell Jekyll what he knows, and there's this weird moment where it's weird because of how it relates to the Mummy, where he prods Jekyll by asking about his friend, and he shows him a picture on his phone that the audience doesn't see, which seems to kickstart Jekyll's transformation into Hyde. And then Van Helsing, he diffuses the situation by invoking the Prodigium byline that allows for anyone under threat of supernatural forces asylum. So, okay, it's weird that they're playing coy with what Hyde looks like, because The Mummy was already in production and would have been out by the time this would have been made, so we would already know what he looks like and how shitty it was.
Yep, absolutely. And also, like, is the picture on the phone that turns, or begins to turn Hyde maybe kind of a bit, if that is just a picture of Mr. Hyde, then it's just Russell Crowe in weird CGI makeup.
They're like purple tinges.
purple tinge of Russell Crowe, and Russell Crowe sees himself with a purple tinge, and he's like, "Oh, that sets me off. I can't deal with that. I'm turning." Like, really? You can't just look in a mirror. Like,
I mean, at least he doesn't deliberately pick a fight with Dr. Jekyll for no reason like Nick Morton does.
Yeah, I appreciate that they make Van Helsing mostly intelligent throughout the script. Like, there's some really stupid things. But for the most part, they try and paint him as, like, a somewhat seasoned guy who knows his stuff.
Yeah.
So that's cool. But also, he's got common sense and wouldn't try and fight a universal monster with a dart gun. So, whatever.
I wish we would find out what his patients are, though, because it's like, are they like, does he have like psychic people in the basement of the basement that is the Prodigium?
You know what this means to me is like, I feel like this, where he says like, "Oh, I'm trying to find this thing about this one thing over here." It's like 2 lines. I feel like whatever movie was announced next that wasn't announced at the time of writing the script, they could tweak the line to be about that. So like, once Mummy comes out, let's assume it was a success. If they start making Bride, but they put this in production, they can change the line to be like, "Oh, my patients have had problems fighting something, 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 Bride of Frankenstein."
Well, there is a Frankenstein reference in here.
There is later. Boy,
yeah,
is there.
Yeah, but no, yeah, Bride was supposed to be the next movie.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, I feel like that would have been, they would have changed it to fit whatever they want. So it's so loosey-goosey and not even... Speaking of, Dr. Jekyll in this movie is so underused, and I know why, because the Dark Universe didn't exist at this point. So they didn't know what level of Jekyll to put in this script. So they changed... I mean, hell, they didn't even know if Jekyll would be like a mainstay character, or if like Jekyll, maybe in production of The Mummy, they would have changed stuff, so they had to change Jekyll. So they kept Jekyll's role so small in this that it would be so disconnected. They could just change it as easily as possible. Because you could replace Jekyll with like Prodigium CEO or something. You know, whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Prodigium CEO Hugh Jackman.
Oh my god, do that, please.
Especially since I have never actually heard Hugh Jackman talk about Van Helsing ever.
No. There was one interview once where like he talked fun it was to shoot, which is all... Sorry, this is kind of related, but the Van Helsing commentary track that was just the Richard Roxburgh, Will Kemp, and Shuler Hensley, none of it was about the quality of the movie. Nobody said it was a good movie. They all said, "Oh, we used wires for this part. Oh, this was fun to shoot. Oh, this day was cold on set." They all just talked about shooting it.
Yeah, Will Kemp, all 5 days he shot.
Exactly. So, like, to me, that says that, like, nobody involved was like, "Man, I'm really proud of this. Oh, good. I had a great end product." No one said that. Stephen Summers sure did say that.
Yeah.
No,
oh, yeah. The audience, we've shown it 6 different times to an audience, and they love it.
They all love it. And the editor's just like, "This was a hunk of fucking shit to edit. God damn it." They're really friends, because he's just picking on him the whole time.
Yeah. But okay, where the fuck was I? Yeah, okay, so, yeah, Jekyll grants them 1 night in the south bedroom, just the one room, and they only have 1 bed.
Yep, which is funny, too, because the bylaws say that you can't be refused for asylum, so Jekyll should be like, south bedroom infinite nights, as many as you'd like, as long as you're under distress. Because that's what the bylaws say. But whatever, it's fine, everything's fine.
I do think it's just he just has a really petty grudge against Van Helsing, like, "You killed my vampire bitch, dude."
That's true. There's definitely some funny history.
I do wonder if he tried to kill Jekyll and then, like...
That, to me, sounds like infinitely more of an interesting of a movie than the Bathory villain.
Jekyll as the villain.
Jekyll, that's why Van Helsing was kicked out, because, like, he saw Jekyll as a monster, and he's like, "Oh, shit, well, you know, my thing." Well,
and so we go to Bathory's yacht on Lake Starburg, which is a real place near Munich. I looked it up.
Okay.
And she performs her bathing ritual with Evelyn, another one of her companions, strapped to a bleeding chair that feeds into the water. And Bathory then uses an apple, a picture of Catherine that's in this massive photo album of all the women she's ever had working for her.
Yep.
And a Latin incantation to place a starve curse on her. And then back at the mansion, Van Helsing finally learns from Catherine that her employer is in fact Countess Bathory, and there's a page about her in his father's book.
Yep.
And we get the background about how she killed 600 girls and bathed in their blood before being walled up and left to die in the 1660s. And they really did wall her up inside a tower and leave her to die. There was like a little tiny hole.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, no, the history of Bathory, it's kind of danced around. Again, I mentioned earlier, but like it's danced around the same way that Vlad's history was danced around in the Bram Stoker stories and stuff like that. So like, I get it. That's cool. They're weaving it in. Don't like Bathory for reasons we'll get into. But it's weird that, like, I get it that she's, like, an evil, like, dominatrix with all these servant women, but, like, a book full of all of your servant, like, I just imagine, like, what if I had, like, a printed out, like, binder full of, like, all of my exes and all their headshots? Like, I would burn that. I would never want anything to do.
I'm just imagining her pulling out the album and singing, "Look at this photograph."
You enhanced the movie for me.
Okay, so they figure that out, and then Dracula suddenly appears in the room, in spite of the house's defenses, making him feel uncomfortable. And he explains that Van Helsing fell into a trap meant for him, and that Bathory has been killing off all his lieutenants because he's king shit of the vampires.
Yep.
Even though we only meet, like, 2 vampires in Dracula Untold, and then he makes a bunch and then kills all of them.
Yeah, that... Dracula Untold problems coming right back.
So is Zach McGowan still somewhere around in this universe? Did he become a vampire?
I almost want to... I was going to say I hope not, but at this point I hope so.
No, instead he got sent back in time and became Scorpion King, Book of Souls.
Everybody's favorite film, Scorpion King 5.
Until the reboot comes out.
Yeah, dude, I hope that between, like, this episode recording and uploading, that the reboot gets into production. Please.
And it stars, like, one of the young rock actors.
Oh, please. Dude, yeah, the young rock actor.
Who's also going to be in Black Adam.
Yeah, he's going to be in that with The Rock, which is, to me, that's just comedic. Like, because now they're going to look so similar and be the rocks together, and now they're double rock. Double rock action, baby.
Scotch on the rocks.
I like my scripts on the rock.
And Dracula's like, I don't understand her power. He says, but I saw you break through her sigil, so I want to, join forces. Combine forces, as the line from the Mummy guys. The Steven Summers Mummy guys.
I hooped and hollered earlier about how Dracula... I got the impression they're going to team up like Scooby-Doo. But, oh my god, Dracula shows up in Prodigium to team up with Van Helsing. Like, dude, when I read that part, I was livid. Like, Dracula, Count Dracula, no matter what version, does not need the scattered brain notes of Ian Van Helsing and his hobo son to do anything.
He's got the book that just says, Monkey, 10 out of 10.
Literally. Ian Mello's hit book about all the monsters. Like Dracula, not even to me.
There's like a page about like King Kong.
My god. Entire just like, and it's just like smiley faces.
There's like a Monsterverse chapter.
Oh my god. The fucking Dark Universe chapters. Dracula, throughout like pretty much every version, he's one of the most brilliant figures in like literary. He's like literally evil Sherlock Holmes. What the hell knowledge of magic would Ian Van Helsing have that Dracula isn't aware of? Especially, and again, I keep bringing it up, that book was wrong. Because Ian Van Helsing did not believe in monsters. So, there's nothing that Van Helsing, the guy, Eric Van Helsing at this point, could possibly offer Dracula. Like, Dracula, the idea that he's been around, because that Untold movie was in the 1400s, he's been around for 600 years. And you're gonna tell me that this kid, who spent maybe 25 of them being angry at Dracula, did this kid knows more about Bathory, Dracula's literal sorry, we're gonna get into spoilers, but like, someone directly related to Dracula in a second, you're telling me that this kid with this stupid book that happens to be wrong that he's been correcting is worth more than 600 years of Count Dracula's knowledge about the monsters that he knows?
And yet he doesn't think to talk to Jekyll?
Yeah. What? Jekyll, the guy who would know the most about Prodigium monsters and has the fucking Creature of the Black Lagoon hands and fucking, what else? The brain of Frankenstein?
Yeah, the gold book of Amun-Ra.
Yeah, all these fucking Book of the Damned. He's got everything. And he's like, you know what? Van Helsing, he's my guy. I'm going to go to him. The guy who famously hates me and wants to kill me. I'm going to work with him, and we're going to have buddy-buddy adventures. So, and we'll get into buddy-buddy adventures.
I will admit, I do find the buddy-buddy stuff to be really funny.
It can be.
We'll get to it.
It came across to me as like a fucking, how do you do, fellow kids? I have a smart.
Yeah, so it's like, and so like Van Helsing's like, no, you killed my parents. He's like, no, I didn't. He goes like, I don't even need you. I can track Bathory using her blood link with Catherine. And they continue to argue, and this is when Catherine learns about the starving curse, because she tries to eat the food only for the food to rot, and the water boils whenever she reaches for it, so she's now one of the Pirates of the Caribbean. Yep, exactly.
And also, like, the line where Dracula says, yeah, I didn't kill your parents, bro. That line, Dracula looks surprised, like, oh, you really don't know what happened? But, like, Dracula knows that the kid only saw you looming over his dead parent. was surrounded by monsters, and then he ran away.
Yeah, Dracula did that stupid thing I hate in movies, and the original Van Helsing movie does this too, where someone falls off a building, and the person looks over and goes, oh?
Yeah,
and he's surprised when people think they pushed him.
Literally, and then after all this time, Dracula so confused that the guy who only saw his parents be dead near and you would possibly be like, oh yeah, he killed. What other conclusion would he possibly draw? Because, let me tell you, I'm not going to spoil what it is, but the explanation that they do give that is canon with this script, holy shit, no one would guess that. No one would possibly assume that for a 10th guess.
Yeah, no one would. It's understandable why Van Helsing thinks his parents were killed.
Yeah. So then Dracula basically, and not to play your role, but Dracula uses that basically to kind of use that as leverage to make Van Helsing work with him. I'll only tell you if you... And Van Helsing, if he really doesn't trust Dracula, probably wouldn't anyway. But
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I'll let you go on.
Yeah, but it's basically because they know they have a limit of 3 days before Catherine starves to death or dies of thirst, and so Dracula is going to trade the info in exchange for helping him kill Bathory.
Yep.
And so Van Helsing reluctantly accepts. And they soon leave in Dracula's supercar, which he calls it an automobile.
Automobile.
Dracula with his supercar, I think, is really funny.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Dude, the best, maybe one of the funniest lines in the script was, a mountain highway winds thick woods. A pair of headlights moves down the road at astonishing speed. Dracula's supercar. I read that, and I was about to die laughing. Who the fuck wrote that and was like, yeah, I can buy this. This is a good idea. But, no, Dracula he kind of becomes Van Helsing's caravan driver and has a smartphone. Very cool and hip. And none of the upcoming sequences, which are about to dive direct, none of them really feel like this this would be this version of Dracula. None of this really feels it almost feels like this is just a vampire that, could be maybe working with Dracula with a different personality.
He's Dracula's body double.
Yeah, Dracula's double. Or it's like his brother.
His fucking
Blackula.
It's fucking Alucard from Son of Dracula. The fat alcoholic Dracula.
Well, do you have any alcohol? Yeah, no.
And so they leave in the car, and Jekyll is seeing them off. And Van Helsing just doesn't tell him who's giving him the ride. He gets Jekyll gets a quick glimpse of Dracula's face, goes did I see what I thought I saw?
Nah, couldn't have been. It literally that's when you play the Batman Arkham game and they literally see you, but you duck behind a thing real quick. They're nothing.
Must be imagining things.
You literally just saw Batman for a full second and you just ran out of the way. That's literally what this is in the script.
It's like in Skyrim when you have your stealth maxed out and you could just be crouching there and they can walk right up to you and not see you.
Yep. And also Jekyll saying, no, that couldn't have been Dracula. What the fuck are you talking about? Dracula's an immortal threat that's always plagued Prodigium since the 1400s. Yeah, it could have been. In fact, Van Helsing, who's hunting him, probably is going to get close to him, so the fact that he's physically close to that, break it down, it all falls apart.
Yeah. I think, what the heck is Jekyll going to do to Dracula with his letter opener?
That's true. He's going to turn into the purple Russell Crowe and fist fight him.
You fight like a younger man. They're dude, even if you're from the 1800s, you're younger than Dracula.
Still. Also, didn't he say you fight like a younger man to Tom Cruise in that?
Yeah.
No, he does not fight he fights like Tom Cruise, who's jumping off buildings doing stunts at the age of 55.
Who's older than Russell Crowe.
Who's, canonically very much older than
Unless canonically Jekyll is supposed to be the Jekyll from the 1880s.
Yeah, if you want to say the serum is also the byproduct, whoopsie, immortal, then yeah, sure.
And so we learn that, while they're in the car, Van Helsing finally thinks to ask, how did you get inside that manor? And apparently, he got invited to a function in that house before Prodigium bought it, so he was already invited in.
Dude, I mentioned it earlier, but Dracula pulling out the smartphone that says the invitation, you are cordially invited to vote. Okay, the idea of an invitation to the manor because the investor very smart, Dracula, but pulling out the smartphone has Disney Channel vibes to me.
But
haha, I'm so cool. Check this tech out. I'm with it.
But I do kind of like the idea of a Dracula who actually manages to roll with the technological changes.
fair, but I feel like Drac himself would probably have like underlings, and this Dracula really doesn't. I'll get into it.
They mention underlings, but we never really see them.
Yep, and there's that establishment they visit.
Oh yeah, in a minute. And they drive and they stop. Catherine has them stop outside the house, which she tells them is Bathory's Munich home. Yep. And it's closed up and empty, though, and so Dracula then tells Van Helsing that Bathory has known about him for centuries and turned into a darker power when he refused to make her into a vampire like him. And I think this is the scene where we get, like, the brief flashback where she's in a cave and she looks up and sees something and is like, huh? Which they never explain what this power is. It just is a thing.
Yep. Again, this is more voiceover narration backstory, so I again skimmed. So maybe I'm unclear on that scene, but any scene that you're too lazy to write, you should not blame me for being too lazy to read. So, passing right over it.
And then he said he sent a lieutenant of his named Lukather to scare her off, but he disappeared. And then Catherine is like, oh yeah, I saw her kill and bleed him, and her absorbing the vampire blood gave her unbreakable skin, like Luke Cage. So was that Zach McGowan?
I was about to say, that feels like the Zach McGowan.
I don't think that's his name, though. Lukather. I don't remember what his character's name was in Dracula Untold.
You bastard, gonna Google him Dracula.
It's in your search history.
I not ever want to research. No, it's not. It's what the hell? It started with an S. Shekel. Hide, Shekel. No, it's Shekelgigan. A mysterious Romani. This is official law. That's amazing. Yeah, no, it's great. Good script.
Yeah, okay, so it's not him. No, Dracula kicked his ass and disposed of him well before.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And so Catherine tries to use her link to track Bathory, but she can only say she's on her yacht somewhere on the Italian coast, which she got out of that lake and into the ocean in record time.
Yeah, I didn't even pick that up.
Yeah, and she can't be more specific than that because she was rarely able to leave Bathory's houses, and when she was in like a car with blacked out windows.
Yep.
And Dracula says, hey, we can go to Berlin, we can get there in 3 hours, and that's where my solicitors live. So once again, I mean, I like this because it's canon to Dracula that he uses lawyers for shit.
Very true. Yeah, I like that too. I like that he's manipulative. I also like that this is not Prodigium, because I feel like a lesser script would probably have this all just be a big Prodigium fest.
Yeah.
Prodigium hullabaloo, where everyone's just hanging out in the gym lab. But yeah, I like this a lot. I like the immortality comes with uniquely he has. And it's Ronaldo and Lee's. Ronaldo's generations and generations. Always been that's pretty cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's always been the same Lee's.
Yup. This part, there's some gems in this script. I don't fully hate it.
Yeah, I like that, and I like how even Dracula's like, I don't really know what he's doing. He's not a vampire.
Yeah, even him himself is like so silly.
It makes me wonder if Lee's was a character they were thinking about introducing down the line.
Honestly, there's definitely some stuff here that like it could be spun off into things, but if not, it's fine as is.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Van Helsing 2004 movie, where they have a lot of backstory that they're cool, they're chilling, you know.
Yeah, they're just like, you want to know who Van Helsing really is? Come back for Hugh Jackman Origins Van Helsing.
Literally, yeah, they explain it. Again, talking about 2004, they get into it and they don't do a whole lot with it, but they were definitely like waiting to like spin that off in a sequel and like explain the things.
Yep, and so they get to Berlin. They go to the Ronaldo and Lee solicitors have been serving the discerning immortal for 300 years.
That's really also 300 years. That's 1700s. So Dracula went from 14 to 1700 without Ronaldo.
Yep. And so 1700s would actually line up with the time frame of the original Frankenstein novel.
Ah, which has explicit. We're close to the name drop.
Yep. Because the original book, if you read it, it gives a couple dates at the beginning. It goes 17 dash and doesn't tell you the rest of the year.
That could be anything in the century.
Yeah. When they arrive there by blah, blah, blah. They are met by an employee named Gunter, whom Dracula... Gunter's great. Dracula tries to mind control him into handing over Bathory's information, but he just no-sells it. He's a toydarian.
Literally. And if you'll indulge me, I like to read the line that Gunter has. It's like, I should have mentioned, the senior partners made it a policy to staff the night crew only with reanimated employees. and blah, 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 blah. My spirit is stored in a phylact tree in the archives, prevents any attempts at mesmerism like just now. And then Dracula kind of ruddles a little bit, and he's like, does it? And then Gunther's like, yes, I'll have to report this to Ronaldo. That, to me, like, that's like one of the best lines.
And then Van Helsing is like, reanimation, huh? You mean like the Frankenstein hypothesis?
Yup. And then he blows the powder, and the guy knocks. So, yeah, okay, this is fine. I've expected to hate this more, but I like a line, like a name drop, a lot more than I would like. Again, we keep talking about it, but the stupid Mummy 2017 room that Tom Cruise walks through where he sees one part of every Universal monster,
yeah.
Which is really frustrating, because you're never going to make those movies. So, yeah, like, I like this a lot better, where it's more organic to the story, instead of like, here's literally the next 10 movies, you know?
Yeah, and like, I wonder, would that actually link to something in Bride of Frankenstein?
You know what? That's an excellent question. I didn't think about that, because the scriptwriters might have known that Bride was next. You know, after
Columbia. I mean, would Lee's be the monster's current alias?
That's an interesting thing. Like the monster, like Frankenstein.
Javier Bardem just walks out and goes, using his fucking Skyfall voice.
That's so wow. Because now you got me thinking, if it's been 300 years, lines up with Frankenstein stuff, you know what? I'm going to give you a probably on that. I think now that this is what they were doing. Or at the very least, it's what they wanted to do, and we're open to changes.
And we'll never know unless we get a look at that David Kep Bride of Frankenstein script. Maybe they were just making shit up.
We have to, like, kidnap Eric and John and just, like, interrogate them and be like, what was going on in this?
Yes. Or just wait, like, 5 years and see if Kep drops the script to his website, because he's posted a ton of shit in the past year.
Dude, yeah, he's like, straight up, like, talked about how much of a failure the... Have you seen his, like, talking about the writer's room?
No, I haven't.
It's so funny. He's like, dude, like, it was so weird. Like, we asked questions like, well, should the monsters be heroes or villains in our... someone else said, we'll build the plane while we're flying it. And he's like, that's such a terrible piece of advice. And then because John, I think, said this. He's like, well, what me and Eric decided to do, it was kind of morbid, but we were like, well, what if we made the movie about the guy who kills all the monsters that didn't work green? It's like, oh my god, this connects so much better now, because it's literally just like a what the hell is the Dark Universe kind of script. You know what I mean? So it almost like points the finger to the Mummy, or anything else in the Mummy that was supposed to.
Yeah, and so, yeah, they're in there. Van Helsing just, he roofies Gunther with some magic powder, and they're in there, and he's just like, Van Helsing is like a kid in a candy store, because it's like all the information on all the monsters he might want to kill, and Dracula's like, dude, I'm letting you into my world. Don't repay the favor by killing off the client list of these guys. And Van Helsing's just literally like, ooh, client list.
Yeah, he is so pumped. I want to point out, because it's also in this scene, there's Dracula. Also, this is the backstory is where Dracula untold. So now I'm imagining Luke Evans, but I'm imagining Luke Evans Dracula. But this feels so much at times like a 90s made TV movie, like almost like it's marketed to like, because there's this one part where, like, instead of saying "oh my god" or "damn," Dracula says "hellfire." Like, he takes the name Hellfire in vain, which is
hell. He's a big fan of the Disney Hunchback.
Yeah, it's weird to me. And then, like, also at a lot of points, which we'll get into, Dracula is basically a dude. So I don't know. Again, problems with this portrayal of Dracula that we're about to rocket into.
Yeah, and so,
it's weird that they would make him say like another name in vain when you could easily keep a PG-13 rating if you by having hell or something normal.
Damn,
you know, he's not really up with the times if he's saying things like hell.
I mean, if Raphael in the original Ninja Turtles movie can go damn.
You didn't say goddamn.
No,
I think the MPAA doesn't like or something.
Yeah. On TV they in the TV they mute the god but not the damn.
I didn't know that. That's so funny.
And so Catherine recognizes one of the numbers, because they don't know which one to look at because they knocked out the guy who knew everything. But Catherine recognizes the number because it was written down in Bathory's diary, which she couldn't read any more of because it was written in Romanian.
Yep.
Nice little detail there. And so they pull out the file and they find the location of her Italian estate. And then we get like a parallel, like it's like the other side of the coin of the solicitors. They go to an Arcana store, what they call it, and it's run by Professor Meyer, who's like an old friend of Van Helsing's, so you can stock up on Monster Hunter supplies to fight Bathory with, and Dracula is in there with them, and he's like very uncomfortable and freaking out, and just probably the worst line of description in the entire thing, where it says, "To Dracula, this place is a Holocaust museum."
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, I get the point of it.
It's a very, like, you went there, guys.
Yup, yeah, 100%. Especially because, like, this isn't like a weird, dark, expressionist thing. This is a blockbuster trying to be like 2017's The Mummy. So, like, what the hell are you talking about?
And, like, there's a moment where Dracula gets very uncomfortable by something. He reacts very violently to something in there, but Van Helsing isn't able to pinpoint what it is.
Yeah,
damn.
That was one of the funniest damn pages. He's like, what is that? Did you see what he looked at? Did he touch anything? God damn it.
Then he makes Dracula pay for the equipment. And he goes like, by the way, I'm going to come back here and burn this place down. Van Helsing's like, hey, I let you into my world, man.
Yeah, it's the same line.
This is one of the other really good scenes in this.
Again, like, I kept bitching about, like, oh, Dracula, they turned him into, like, instead of the villain, they made a badder Dracula, and Dracula's teaming up with Van Helsing, who doesn't know anything. But, like, I was complaining about that earlier. But reading this, and reading, like, the comedy work, and, like, the scenes work, kind of saw, like, okay, I now know what I think the problem. It's no longer the fact that this exists. It's the fact that Van Helsing has never fought Dracula on screen before. This would be, like, the perfect follow-up to a movie where Van Helsing fought Dracula already. Like, it's like if they started with Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Because we don't have now the prior context of the Terminator being a threat. We now just see him as, like, this kind of hero. So it's like, in that context, it's like, I feel like they're skipping it's a dark universe, they're skipping all the steps, but, like, they're skipping a few steps with how they should tell this story. This is like a perfect part 2 to a Van Helsing movie. Yeah,
or show a little bit more of Dracula in that prologue. Like, show him do some bad shit.
Maybe you don't jump all 25 years later. Or maybe when you meet Dracula in the castle, Van Helsing fights Dracula for a bit, and then later they have, like, a scene where
or they do, like, a montage showing the 25 years.
Yeah, or something along those lines. That'd be, at the very least, like, you know, that Zack Snyder style opening montage where 5 minutes tells a visual story?
Yeah.
You know, without stupid title cards or text on screen? Yeah, we could use one of those, maybe. But, I don't know, the movie wants to do what, like, episode 7 of the Dracula Dark Universe Untold show would do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean. But we don't know how much of this was the writers and how much of this was dictated to them by Kurtzman.
Right.
It's hard to tell, or if they were dictated anything at all and were just told, here, make shit up.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, it's not like the Dark Universe had, like, a real plan anyway. So, I don't. They just said, make a Van Helsing movie, make a reboot, and their choice was to add in Dracula Untold Dracula because they thought it was canon at the time, and turn him into, I'm going to say it, the hero almost.
Until the end.
Almost. He's, like, basically an anti-hero in the whole story.
Yeah. So they drive off in the supercar.
Dracula's supercar.
The automobile. The car he probably drove in, the reluctant werewolf. And Van Helsing sleeps in the backseat, and Dracula has a conversation with Catherine. And he talks about, like, you know, he's usually the type he preys on, but, you know, her blood is coursing with Bathory's magic, so he'll make an exception. And this segues into Dracula talking about his origin. And he says he became a vampire because he was the prince Vlad the Impaler, and he made all kinds of enemies, and so he became a vampire to protect his family from his enemies, which only served to separate him from them forever. Woo! Yes, his vampirism separated you from them, not her fucking falling off a cliff.
Yep, literally, because, like,
because he punched the ground and cracked the ground, and then later on it breaks and she falls.
It was directly his fault. But yeah, he's, like, complaining about how he screwed over himself. Like, Dracula, that monologue you're talking about at the top of page 69, which is funny in and of itself, is, it's weird because that was the exact point that I went, holy shit, this is Dracula Untold. I didn't know that until page 69, giggity, where he monologued about the plot of Dracula Untold. And that's why it's like, it's a quasi-sequel, it's kind of connected, but, like, with this, it's completely connected. Like, it's very much planned on being with the option to write it out.
Yes, it is. But even as it stands, the story he gives is not exactly the story of Dracula Untold. Like, it's not like he pissed off everybody around him in that movie. No, he became he became Dracula Untold in that movie because they were being invaded by Sultan Fade.
Right, and they took the real Vlad the Impaler, and this man who's like one of the most evil men in all, he should be up there in the comic Hitler in terms of what he did to like kill everybody and how he tortured them. They took that character and made him sympathetic and made it like, oh, I just want to protect my wife and kid, like a real good American hero.
It's one of those things where there's contradictory accounts of him, and most of them were written by his enemies.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. That's fair.
But they definitely toned that back a little too much for Dracula Untold, because they barely even mentioned the Impaler thing in the movie. It was more of a subplot as written. But in the movie, it's just like, we're doing the narrated prologue that we don't really need.
Right. But, like, let's also have, like, our audience sympathize with Vlad. And then one could make the argument, oh, well, how do you make a Dracula without making... What I would say of that is, like, you don't have to make him Vlad the Impaler. You could just make him Dracula. Because Dracula, in the Bram Stoker book, is not actually Vlad. He's just inspired strongly by Vlad and the legends of it.
Well, there's like a brief moment where Van Helsing equates the two, but it's like a blink and you'll miss it line.
Yep, exactly. So it was earlier in the Van Helsing van. The Van Helsing. The Caravan Helsing. But whatever, yeah. No, so the point of that is that like this was the exact moment I realized, and this point on, Luke Evans, in my mind. I know it described him differently, but I still pictured him in that armor with like the red dragon head on it. So he, even in modern day where it doesn't make sense or fit appropriately, it's just he's in the armor.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that later because he talks about it again.
Yep.
And where the big departure from Dracula Untold as it is in the movie happens. Like it's a bit different, but okay, so
it's very
he
different.
he says, now my dynasty has all but died out and my last descendant wants me dead. Which is a big fucking spoiler for a twist later on in the movie.
Yeah! When he first said that line, I thought, is Van Helsing his descendant? And then he kept reading, and I was like, oh, no, it's Bathory. Oh, okay.
And in reality, they were distantly related.
Oh, real Bathory, real Vlad?
Yeah, they would have been like distant cousins or something.
Okay. Then that makes slightly more sense why that was written into the script then. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, it doesn't fully connects, but we'll get there.
No, yeah, we'll get there. And so, just before dawn, this is probably the biggest laugh I got out of this script. Dracula pulls over at a roadside inn because he's like, I can't stay out during the day, man. And Van Helsing's like, but no, we're on a time limit here. She's gonna die if we wait. So he's like, what are we gonna do? He stuffs Dracula in the trunk, keeps driving.
Yeah.
That was funny.
I don't know. To me, it's like, this is Bram Stoker's vision, just as Bram Stoker intended. Punchline, they basically
turned this into a buddy cop movie.
They did. They turned it into a buddy cop movie.
This is Shane Black's Van Helsing.
And again, like, I think it would work so much better as like a part 2 to a part 1 of where Van Helsing fought Dracula, but again, like, even in the script, they've never interacted once until that church. So I don't know, to me that's like, I feel like if you're gonna paint him as his arch villain, Dracula didn't even know who this fucking kid was until he clicked in his head, like, oh yeah, that one kid that one time who saw me do a weird thing in front of his dead parent. Oh yeah. That to me, that's like, you could have done, I don't know, established Van Helsing and Dracula as like those are the big two where they're fighting and he's tracking the other, and like that's a big deal. Whereas like Dracula doesn't even care about Van Helsing until he first meets him.
Yeah, like he does. He's like, who are you? And so like they drive for a day over the Alps in the supercar. And Van Helsing and Catherine, they have a bonding moment where he's like, oh, that's not just because of my parents, it's because monsters existing violates the natural order, and so someone has to push back, which is it's almost like we're the ones that bump back line from Hellboy. And they start to bond, and it very nearly becomes a romantic moment. So yeah, we're setting up the token love interest.
Catherine is very much just there to fall almost both of the main characters, which is really weird to me. But, it doesn't seem like a love triangle until like literally the very climax.
Yeah.
Where that happens. And then it's like, oh, really? That was set up? ? But whatever.
It's a little better than the man and woman fall in love because they're on screen together.
Literally everybody's favorite Hollywood trope.
But I like the fact that he's not helping her because of the love interest thing.
Yes, I like that a lot.
The love interest thing comes in because he's helping her.
Right, and a lot of his sympathy for her is because, to an extent, And that culminates, we'll get there, in a scene in the middle of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Oh, yeah, the shopping montage.
I feel like KiramidHead and I are like, having read the script already, we're just like, oh yeah, this comes back later really stupidly in this part. And he goes, oh yeah, that's like Bill.
But their romantic moment, it gets interrupted by Dracula banging on the trunk going, I know the sun's down.
Yeah.
So imagine Luke Evans doing that.
Oh my god. Yeah, literally. That's what I did.
And so they arrived in an Italian villa, which Dracula bought before they left Berlin.
Which is really funny because, yeah, that makes sense. He'd have all kinds of riches overall.
I mean, we know he's into real estate from the original book.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, that fits.
Maybe Dracula caused the housing crash.
It's funny because, like, every 3 or 4 out of 10 things that they do with Dracula, wow, that's good. They nailed that. Good job.
And then they go to, I made an unintentional pun here, they stake out Bathory's residence, which is on the top floor of a casino. And I like the point they make where it's like, yeah, all these people go into the casino. If a few of them disappear, someone might not even notice.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That totally checks out.
And the casino, it is totally like a James Bond movie casino.
Literally. And the casino is like kind of the second act set piece. I kind of wish it was the third. I kind of wish it culminated in. It seems more interesting to me.
Oh, yeah.
Because the third act ends up being in this really kind of bland and...
A castle.
Yeah, the bottom, not even the top where the cool stuff is.
And they notice red lights blinking in the windows, and this is where Catherine tells us about the how Bathory creates her dead men. And what she does is she picks a very strong man, takes him to bed for the night, and that leaves him a mindless slave, so I'm left to assume that she literally fucks their brains out.
That's an amazing way of putting it.
Yes, it's exactly what it is. I want to point out
that also, pedantically, more voiceover while we're seeing what's happening on screen happen. But
yeah, true.
Like, they literally wrote in Catherine V.O., she needs a new servant, she blah, 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 blah. And then Bathory walks straight up to a guy and gets the guy. Like, they're describing the exact thing that happens.
Well, I mean, Van Helsing needs to figure out how these guys work. Yes?
Yeah, but I feel like you could do one or the other. You don't need to show and tell.
At least they didn't do Super Italy.
Literally, that sounds awful. So yeah, I guess it could be a lot worse than
yeah.
I don't even hate it. I'm gonna be honest, I don't even hate it. I bitch about it, but this script has some high points.
Yeah, it's not. I will say it's better than The Mummy.
Better than the
Tom Cruise.
2017? Oh,
yes, easily. It's a more coherent story. The main character is actually a character from something. He's not Nick Morton, Devil Man.
To me, it's like this is at least a little bit closer to what the Dark Universe kind of the potential that you could potentially tap with the Universal Monsters thing you're doing. So, like,
it's an action movie, but it is still leaning into the horror stuff a bit more. Whereas when the Mummy 2017, Mummy Impossible, when that leans into the horror, it's entirely random scenes of like Tom Cruise hallucinating the mummy walking towards him.
It's random, useless scenes that usually either turn into a vision or just divulge into a weird action scene.
Or Jake Johnson showing up and ripping off American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, dude, I watched American Werewolf after a dealer's choice, obviously, but I watched it after 2017's The Mummy, like years after. I never realized how much that ripped off Werewolf.
Oh yeah!
Like, oh my god, the little bit of respect I had for just that part of that scene gone. Whatever.
And at least, an American Werewolf in London had the balls to not bring the dead guy back to life for no reason at the end.
Right, and it also had the balls to do like really interesting practical makeup instead of half CGI.
Hey Nick, thanks for bringing me back.
Yeah, with their weird quips.
So it would be led by... So basically, the Dark Universe going forward would be Tom Cruise as Devil Mummy, and Jake Johnson would be the Benny from the Steven Sommers movie.
My god. I even think back to, like, 2004 Van Helsing. Carl, the Friar Carl, is at least, like, funny and fun to watch on screen with David Wenham.
Useful.
And useful at all. And, like, he helps Van Helsing the entire time. Without him, I don't know if Van Helsing is successful at all. So, contrast that with fucking, what is his, Jake Johnson?
His name is Sergeant Vale.
Oh, I'm so glad that you have this, the context of the names. Like, yeah, fucking Sergeant Vale. What the hell does he do? He shows up to give exposition to Tom Cruise.
Get bit by a spider and die.
Yeah, and literally just die.
Because Tom Cruise shoots him gangster style.
So much of The Mummy 2017... Sorry to keep talking about it. I know we're not talking about that movie, but it's directly relevant to this script. So much of The Mummy 2017 is just characters telling Tom Cruise exposition. So much of it.
You're an asshole, Tom Cruise.
Literally, it's just endless amounts of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Sergeant Vale is a named character in those early drafts, and he dies like 5 pages in.
That's amazing. I'm so glad.
And so, getting back to where I was.
Right.
And so dawn is approaching, so they retreat to the villa, and Dracula insists that Catherine buy Van Helsing some new clothes. So that he tells Van Helsing to buy some new clothes because he needs to fit in with the rich casino crowd. And then he turns to Catherine and goes, "No, you buy them. He was raised by wolves."
That to me is very not only funny but accurate and like astute. Because
they keep bringing up how badly he smells and how his hair and beard are all tangly.
Right. He's like a hunk of shit. He's like a hobo. Again, I don't like that element of the character, but if you're gonna do it, that's a good way to lean in.
Yeah, and then so Dracula locks himself in a bedroom for a day. And then Van Helsing, this is where he gets the terrible hacking line. He gets the idea for a loophole in the curse, and it's actually a smart idea, is that he sets up an IV for Catherine, which gives her, liquids, nutrients, and glucose so she doesn't die immediately.
Yep.
It's a smart idea because that makes sense for the loophole. But it's the way he describes it as like hacking. It's like, no, this is not a 90s hacking movie.
I agree completely. I think it's a really smart concept, but I think that line was like, hey, hip, relevant kids will understand hacking and computers and haha. I feel like they could have even cut out that one sentence. They have an internal logic, and sometimes you can find a loophole. That's all you need. You don't need the computer programs line. That's it.
Yeah. Or this is studios going, we know all about hacking. Look what happened to Sony.
Yeah, literally.
I wish they would have hacked Universal and leaked the Dark Universe scripts. That would have been amazing.
Please. Oh my god.
And so they then they get their big shopping montage with Van Helsing, getting tailor-made suits, which I'm guessing they're putting on Dracula's tab.
Yeah, of course.
And he gets shaved and groomed, and they're like, he's like a model. And he goes to the tailor and goes, "Can you put more pockets in the jacket?"
That was the best goddamn line. I love that.
It is really good.
Because I never realized that about the 2004 Van Helsing. It's like, yeah, he has 80 different gadgets up that coat.
And then while they're out, Bathory receives a letter at the casino, and she looks at the handwriting, and she's really surprised. Ooh. And so back at the villa, Catherine, I'm only mentioning this because it comes up later. Catherine gives him some crap over this little plastic ball he has that's filled with a vinegar concoction, and it smells really bad. He goes yeah, but it's good against Draugr. And she's like, have you ever seen a Draugr? No. So maybe they don't exist. So he takes it out, leaves it on the table, and then they fuck.
Yep, literally, instantly. I like the idea that moments after he walks out all clean shaven and all, she's like, oh, I'm Pound Town time. We gotta get there.
And it cuts ahead to it's at sunset. So obviously she seems pretty satisfied. So we know he's a better lover than Nick Morton.
Literally. And then she even has a line of dialogue like this. Thank you. Meaning, thank you for fucking me so hard that I feel so much better now.
I haven't gotten piped in years. I just got this crazy lesbian supernatural bitch who's obsessed with me.
0% dick in Bathory's house. It was crazy. He was starving.
And I love how she wakes up and he's just he's already left the bed. He's tinkering with his toys.
Literally.
It's like that scene in the original Terminator where Kyle Reese is making pipe bombs in the kitchen. Literally.
And also you gotta imagine, there's no way this version of Van Helsing, he's always hunting monsters and tinkering with potions. I'm surprised that he's so chill about it. I'm surprised he's not wow, with a big smile.
Yeah, he's not like Carl in Van Helsing.
Carl is getting all kinds of laid.
While fully clothed.
Yeah, exactly. Movie. You can't have naked people in a movie. That's a sin. You gotta ban the movie.
They go to get Dracula to plan their attack, but he's already gone. And so he goes and meets Bathory in a bar. And we learn their full history here. Bathory is Dracula's granddaughter, who knew all about him and received gifts from him regularly. She wanted him to make her a vampire, but he wanted her to continue the bloodline and disappeared. It's really funny the way they describe it here, is that her asking to become a vampire is her just standing on top of the castle tower and shouting out at the night, hoping he hears her.
Yeah, that's spectacular. Also, are we officially connecting to Dracula Untold here? The thing is, nothing about this rock or whatever that Dracula happened to be near was really important in Dracula Untold. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the stone circle.
You're right. It would just
we don't get to that part of the backstory quite yet.
Okay, all right. But when we get there, it's like it's so much like connecting doesn't really connect.
Yeah, which is why I say I think they watched the trailer and nothing else. So Bathory found another source of power, which I think this is where we get the flashback to her in the cave, maybe. But Dracula called this meeting because he thinks Van Helsing's knowledge could potentially cure her, and he does still kind of care about her because she is his descendant, blah, blah, blah. And interesting idea that he cares about his own.
Yeah, I get that, but like, at the same time, like, what the hell is going on with Bathory? Because, like, this is established as a problem in, like, the 1600s.
Yeah.
So this has been happening for 100 years.
Quite a while.
So does Dracula just not care enough to, like, make sure that she's out of the picture? Or, like, this just now the day where he's like, you know what, I feel like hunting Bathory.
Maybe she was just a serial killer and she's kind of built herself up over the years until she became more of a threat. It's a little vague.
Maybe, yeah, it's not really clear to me. To me, like, if I were watching the movie, I'd be like, oh, so you just picked today, the day Van Helsing encountered you for the first time to fight Bathory, I guess? Okay.
And so Bathory, she just grabs Dracula's hand and squeezes hard enough to crack bone, and it mentions that from a distance, it just looks like they're holding hands because it's supernatural strength. And that's when Van Helsing, who tracked Dracula there, watches from the window and is aghast at the fact that he thinks they've made an alliance. This just did the third act misunderstanding from a romantic comedy.
I know, dude. That's like the most... like, you don't have to be lazy. The material for a good reason why Van Helsing Dracula is already in the script. You don't need to add in this weird misunderstanding. Also, like, Dracula just meeting with Bathory, you can't logically assume that they're already in cahoots. Like, clearly by this, like, Dracula's character to Van Helsing so far has been, stop Bathory with me, and I'm willing to concede a little bit to help me stop her, and all this stuff. And it's like, if Dracula would do that, why would he, like, literally Bathory to conspire against Helsing? He could kill Van Helsing at any point in time, which we'll get to in a second.
Oh, God, yes. Okay, here's where we get the really weird part, where we find out that Bathory has expanded her power to the point that she can just control everybody's minds, and she controls literally everybody in the bar to establish her dominance. And then she forcefully kisses her own grandfather because she considers herself above all like human morality and stuff like that. So I'm like, yeah, after hearing about people like us, that has got to be an Alex Kurtzman edition.
Yeah, I think Alex Kurtzman is projecting. He definitely has something going on.
Yeah, but she does let him go, honoring the truce that they made for that one moment. So technically, she's better at honoring truces than Van Helsing is.
Oh, 100%. Because Van Helsing, like we'll see in a second, is going to immediately everything.
And so Van Helsing makes it back to the villa first, and he's just like, I missed something, flipping through his father's book, and he finds the footnote mentioning the relationship between Dracula and Bathory. It's like, we've been betrayed!
Also, even you mentioned yourself that, like, Bathory, the real person, is related somewhat to the real person, Vlad. Anyone can Google that. And this takes place in modern day, where Van Helsing Googled that.
Yeah.
So, what the hell is he surprised about? You know, like, I don't get it.
Yeah. And so Dracula returns soon after, and Van Helsing just fucking ambushes him, getting him with this was a good scene. I liked it.
Yes, okay.
He stabs him with a stake in the back, sprays him with holy water, burns his face with a cross, and finally a stake to the heart, which makes him collapse into a little ashy body.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so this part here, there's a very brief moment where Van Helsing... This is, and I cannot stress this enough, spectacular. This is everything I've ever wanted, and it's like 2 pages long. And for once, Dracula isn't portrayed like this weird, stupid idiot bitch who does nothing and can do nothing and needs the help of a stupid book that knows nothing. You show Dracula's power, his movesets, his immense power, but it also shows Van Helsing's ability to, over the 25 years that he's been doing, study and learn the moves of Dracula enough to the point where he can actually counter a lot of that. And you don't know who's gonna win, because it's literally like raw power and dominance versus a man's ingenuity and devotion to this power. It reminds me a lot of the Dark Knight Returns comic. Batman fights Superman, and it's like, well, it could go either way, because the power of the gods versus the smartest mind in the DC world. And it's like, okay, to me, this is that. It's a few pages long, so good, almost worth reading the whole script just to get to. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
I really wish that, like, it culminated in a better way. But aside from that, it's like the one scene where Dracula is competent. I'm saying that as a man who knows that he loses the fight. But Dracula is very competent and very awesome. And I'm actually okay with Van Helsing.
And also, we do find out later that Van Helsing has stuff in his pockets that, weakens Dracula just by being near him, which is smart.
Right. It's weird because it feels like he's weak when the script wants him to be weak.
That is
Dracula,
true.
Like, goes pretty hard fighting Van Helsing in this scene, which is stuff that he, like, pretty much kind of couldn't really do in the end fight when Van Helsing gets rid of his suit stuff to make Dracula stronger. It feels like he's strong when the script wants him to be strong and when it wants.
Yeah, it's the powers for plot convenience.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Van Helsing concocts a new plan to get to Bathory, which they say is a shitty plan, but it's actually not that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, he injects a special tincture into Catherine's IV, planning to send her back to Bathory and allow her to bleed her and absorb it, which the idea is that's a special kind of substance that will weaken Bathory, softening her Luke Cage skin and making her vulnerable to Van Helsing's attacks, including this special dagger, which they call it a Vorpal dagger, which, tone down the Alice in Wonderland references, guys. Since the last time anyone, like, in the general audience saw a Vorpal sword, it was in the shitty Tim Burton movie.
Right. And isn't it like a Jabberwocky kind of?
Yeah, well, because in the poem Jabberwocky, the Jabberwock is fought and killed with a Vorpal sword, and then they make that into the centerpiece of the shitty Alice in Wonderland movie, where they give her armor. It's a special dagger where it's like infused with silver, the fucking pieces of like a saint's shroud. It's basically everything that's good against like supernatural shit.
Yep.
It's like Hellboy's bullets, but has like a dagger. And so, the idea is that her Luke Cage skin will soften up and he'll go in and shank her.
That's like the gist. That's the idea. It's not a bad one, but what's weird to me is, like, the plan literally requires Catherine's life being strongly at stake.
Yeah.
So
to make a pun.
Not make another.
No, it's Dracula's life who's at stake.
Yeah, and we'll get to that literal stake. But yeah, so it's weird to me that, like, I get it. It's probably the only quote good plan, even though it fails. But to me, it's weird that, like, the whole point of Van Helsing in this protect Catherine. So his plan to stop Bathory is like, yeah, let's like dangle you in her stupid tub where she's gonna cut your wrist and suck.
Yeah. It's very X3 because this is why the pawns go first.
Yeah. Except that's cool because Magneto, like, he doesn't give a shit about like the pawn. That shows his true mentality. Where
his true mentality for that one movie.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to.
There's a reason you didn't direct that one.
Yeah, and so they head to the casino, which it's very James Bond. Catherine points out the back stairs to Van Helsing before she gets picked up by Bathory's major domo, which is a word I don't get to say much, and take it to the penthouse. Yep, it's a cool word. Take it to the penthouse via elevator. And Van Helsing makes his way past the dead men guards by using pentacles. He has henna tattooed on his hands, and I looked these up, and what he does with them is relatively close to what they're supposed to do. So it's in the ballpark.
Okay, again, that's pretty cool.
And there's some complications because like there's one guy who sneaks up on him, and he has to get them both to jump off the balcony and die.
Yeah, there's some Steven Stummer style antics going on.
And in the penthouse, Bathory almost starts to believe Catherine's story. She says that Dracula kidnapped her and that she escaped when Van Helsing attacked him, and sets up a machine to bleed her into the tub. And Van Helsing, who's climbing up the terrace from a balcony, he does his little chalk trick again. And he also has like special lenses that can see like the magical barriers. That was cool. Yeah,
that's super cool to me. I love the incorporation of the gadgets. Again, it is, like I mentioned at the top, kind of weird that like they're mixing magic and MacGyver. That to me is kind of strange, but other than that, like I love the interesting uses of what else you magic. You know, a virtuous man commands you, stand aside, say nothing. That's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah,
I like how Van Helsing's reaction to this. Holy shit! You know?
And Bathory at the last second realizes something is wrong and figures out that Catherine has been poisoned. And so Van Helsing enters through the window, commands the Major Domo to kill Bathory with his hand tattoos, but it doesn't work, and Bathory just goes, die! And he dies. And that's like, crap.
That's kind of... It's pretty funny to see, like, this one Major Domo commanded 3 times by 2 people, ending in him dying. So it's throw him off the roof, and then he goes, kill the witch, and then he goes, die. That's kind of funny.
he's like, oh yeah, Dracula's dead, but Bathory doesn't care. And Van Helsing learns the truth of what happened, so he's like, ah, shit. And he tries to fight her with his dagger, but it can't pierce her skin. Bathory is about to kill Van Helsing, and she even drinks some of his blood. And that's when Catherine manages to topple over the tub filled with the tainted water, causing Bathory to freak out and drop him. And he crashes through the window. And he actually lands on, like, the terrace below and is, like, picking glass out of his arms.
Yeah.
He runs back down the stairs, and he struggles against a group of dead men because blood from his wounds is obscuring the tattoos, but he eventually fixes that and makes it work. But then the people in the casino, they're under Bathory's control, and they all turn and attack Van Helsing, forcing him to flee back up the stairs and out the second floor window, and he has the dead men, hold them back. And he's out of the casino, running down the street to the marina to get away, but he gets pursued by a bar guest, a really, really big wolf. And that is an actual folkloric thing.
Yeah, I get it. I do, but, like, it's weird to me. Like, the script has the chance to use and instead uses an entirely separate wolf-related legend.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if it's a missed opportunity or if it shouldn't have been there. But it's kind of this weird, like, mishmash where you're referencing Frankenstein, you got Jekyll in there. You may as well lean into it.
The Wolfman runs after Van Helsing screaming, "Kill me!"
Do you have any alcohol?
But no, the bar guest actually pops up in Witcher 3.
Yeah, boy does he.
Yep. And so Van Helsing steals a boat, but the beast manages to leap really far into the air to get on the boat, and they fight. Van Helsing blinds it with a white powder and lures it into the ocean with the scent of blood. So, bar guest gone.
Yeah.
And the boat runs aground on some rocks, but Van Helsing makes it safely back to the villa.
Yeah, Van Helsing gets his ass whooped over the course of this fight scene. Like, you said he's picking out glass from his skin, he's thrown through buildings, out windows, against walls. He's just done. And he's still, like, trucking like a trooper. And
so he looks to Dracula's corpse, considers his options, and he, in true canon Universal fashion, because this is how it works in House of Frankenstein, he takes the stake out, and the reborn Dracula, comes together, starts to attack him, and Van Helsing puts the stake back in. That was funny.
It's played for laughs, as it should be, because there's no way you could play that seriously at all. But, like, to me, I read that, and I was like, you didn't even make, like, a new reason. You used the same bad reason that House of Frankenstein did, one of the disappointing monster movies. Like, you couldn't, I don't know, like, maybe Van Helsing shouldn't have killed Dracula. Because, like, removing the stake means he's okay now. But also, if you want to make the argument of, okay, well, look what he did to Lily, where he put the things on her eyes and buried her and all that stuff, and he perma-dead her or something. If you're going to make that argument, he didn't care enough to make Dracula perma-dead. He didn't go through the iPhone snapshot of his gallery to Dracula, the guy he's trying to kill.
Yeah, or maybe he was thinking about keeping Dracula in place as a possible chess piece.
So he's like, all right, I'm keeping him in stasis with this.
Yeah,
just,
but
chill out.
He's gonna put him next to Amonette's fucking Mercury coffin.
Well, if you're keeping Dracula in stasis, hunting and killing Bathory alone with no help is kind of not a smart move.
No, yeah. It is funny that they just bring in that weird House of Frankenstein plot point.
That is, I read that and I was like, oh my god, House of...
Because I remember seeing that in the movie as a kid, and I'm like, is that how it works?
Right, yeah, I thought the same thing. Like, and I remember, like, oh my god, like, you should take pretty much no element of House of Frankenstein.
And so he takes it out again, steps into a chalk pentacle on the floor to protect himself from the angry vampire, and he tosses Dracula an IV bag full of blood to feed on, and he says, hey, I made a mistake. Catherine got taken. And then Van Helsing's like, he says that he could track Bathory now because she's fed on his blood. So that's keeping in line with the rules they've set up. And Dracula agrees to help destroy her, but he says, because of what you did, you're going to owe me a death once our truce is up.
Sure, but that's also like, I don't know, Dracula kind of just made that up. He's adding that in there just to make this interesting. Like, that, there's definitely no, like, owed anything. Yeah,
like, and they don't pay this off as well as they could have, which is one of my gripes with the ending. Because I feel like even the story as it stands could stay the same. Just rewrite the one scene a little bit.
Yep. Oh, I have massive beef with the ending.
And so they track Bathory to a castle on some cliffs above the Black Sea, and Dracula's like, hey, I know this place. It was my family's summer palace, and I know how to sneak you in through the caves underneath and up through the dungeons and cellars, which is a plot point they lifted from Arnold Schwarzenegger's Conan the Destroyer.
Oh, shit, you're right. God, I hate when you're right. Stop being right.
My sister's cousin's brother.
This scene you're talking about is the scene where Dracula is
He finally gives the whole story.
the whole story. All right.
And it's like, okay, so he's like, before they go into the caves, though, he's like, I'm going to uphold my end of the deal and will explain what happened that night. And he says, that mountain, it was where he first became a vampire, in a cave near the peak. And later on, Bathory went there in search of the one who made him, but Dracula says, I have long since drank his blood, so I am now the eldest. And Bathory then experimented with black magic, TM, and woke something up, filling the mountain with monsters, the same ones that killed Van Helsing's parents, and Dracula came there that night to put them down and reassert his power, and assures Van Helsing that his parents died and weren't made into vampires, so they're cool now.
Oh, okay. So this is like the big twist. This is like the linchpin of the movie that it's trying to do. Very convoluted. Like, I had to reread it like 3 times to actually understand. Dracula didn't command all the monsters to kill the parents. He showed up there to reclaim his hunting ground on the night that just happened to be that one night that Van Helsing's parents happened to die in front of him and looked like Dracula was going to turn them into vampires or something. Like, it's so, like, you know what it reminds me of? Oh, have you seen WandaVision?
Yes, I have.
Okay, cool. So spoilers for WandaVision, because it's been out for like months now.
Agatha all along.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me a lot of how in Age of Ultron the Mind Stone was experimenting on them and then got their powers from the Mind Stone. Okay, cool. And then at the end of WandaVision, they're like, oh yeah, the Mind Stone sure did that, but the Mind Stone really just detected this energy side of Wanda. She comes from this ancient magical line of witches where she has like a special magic, not normal magic, but also Quicksilver has like unrelated powers unrelated to sorcery and magic.
It's the X gene.
Yeah. So like they add like 3 separate origin stories for Wanda at the end of it. Like, you had a perfectly fine one-line explanation, because I know you can't use mutants. I get it. You've already doubled down. You're not going to go back and for a mutant. You've added so much now that it's like, I don't now know how Wanda... And this is exactly what I feel like the opening of Van Helsing is, where it's like, or this movie, I should say, where it's like, okay, well, so Dracula just happened to go back to that stone at that night, because he really wanted to make sure that he claimed that stone on that night, not the other night. And he goes to all the monsters, and he's like, hey, monsters, don't kill the parents of what will be Van Helsing, the guy who happens to know everything about the monsters in this magical monster book, but got it all wrong, I guess. And I'm going to go there to reclaim my hunting ground, which isn't even his hunting ground, because he's just Dracula and exists, like, in modern day by the end of Untold, also in modern day in this movie. Not relevant. And again, in Dracula Untold, that hunting ground, not relevant. It just happens to be the place where Charles Dance was. Like, none of this is, like, they're adding so much there that wasn't there, that now when you look back, it's like, oh, well, this is way more important than they pretended.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't know.
I have to make my point about this, which is, okay, so he says that the reason why Bathory didn't find the vampire there is because, oh, I killed him long ago. By long ago, you mean that Charles Dance left the mountain long ago, and then he walked up behind you in the middle of the city street and very loudly said, let the games begin, and then you turned around, killed him, and now you're the eldest.
I forgot about that. That's true. I remembered it as Luke Evans saying let the games, but no, you're right. Charles Dance said let the games begin, which is very loudly directly behind Luke Evans' team in real time, which is like canonically 3 years before I assumed Dracula's skull was in Prodigium. So no matter how you connect these stupid movies, they don't work. They just don't. I killed him long ago, circa the script being written.
Which leads me to go that, like, they didn't know. It leads me to think that they didn't know if Dracula Untold was supposed to be part of this movie or not. So they just did it, and they didn't watch the movie because they were just getting evasive answers from Kurtzman. They watched the trailer and said, we basically know what the plot is here.
Yep. It's almost like they got a log line. Okay, we'll leave it in. Again, like with the stupid, like, magical stone hunting ground. What do you mean hunting ground? Does Dracula only hunt at that stone? Is humanity, like, protected if they just don't go near that stupid stone? Because that's not Dracula at all. That's like the weirdest, like, only within these boundaries Dracula.
Yeah, they don't really explain the stone circle thing very well at all.
They really don't. Also, like, what the hell other black magic is, like, Bathory into? Because, like, she has so much going on with the blood stuff, but, like, the dead men, I feel like they're just one aspect of what she can do. And then by the end, well, we're going to get to more monsters, but basically she summons more monsters. And it's like, wow, where the hell were they the whole movie? They could have been way more useful.
Okay, so we go to the girls' quarters of the castle, and we learn that Bathory has been bleeding Catherine for 3 straight days, and she's not dead.
I guess the glucose IV or whatever was really keeping her for such a long time that she's good to drain blood for 3 days.
And like Dracula and Van Helsing, they're sneaking in through the dungeons, and there's a room filled with bones, and Dracula's like, this shit wasn't here when I lived here. Bathory did this.
Yeah.
Then we go back to the girls' quarters where all of the companions have been gathered into the same room, and Catherine realizes, oh no, Van Helsing is coming. So she asks Evelyn to get her clutch. And while climbing up from the dungeons to the cellars, Dracula remarks he's weaker around Van Helsing and talks him into shedding some of his defenses. We can fight Bathory at his full power. And so we get what's basically the cliche scene of like the guy unloading all his hidden weapons and like leaving them on a table, which has been in like 100 movies, probably started with Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Then Two Towers did it.
Yep, and then there's a visual gag in the middle where it wasn't like a scene, it was like a quick cut that led to the lobby scene.
And then there was the animated Sinbad movie where they do the exact same joke.
But no, I actually really do like that sequence because that relationship right there was probably one of the only parts of the two of them together that felt like it worked really well. Again, as if this were a sequel to another movie. But it establishes Van Helsing as a seasoned veteran, and it kind of answers the question from their exchange where like, oh, the boy in over his head? Well, no, he 80 different talismans and garments that helps him. Like, okay. For him to actually choose to, get rid of that is like a big step forward for him. And it also shows why Dracula's been so much of a bitch recently.
Yeah.
Although Dracula did move pretty damn fast when fighting Van Helsing. Again, convenient writing, whatever.
Yeah, but now that like those things are like taken out and stuck in a hole in the wall, he can like do like Flash moves.
Yeah, he can basically move like Flash, just like kind of Dracula.
Dracula Untold, who can move with the speed of a falling star, or whatever shitty, like, dubbed in.
Yeah, that's it, just 9.8 meters per second.
It's a shitty dialogue they probably added in when they put Charles Dance in the movie.
Pretty much. And we'll get into, I'm gonna reference the scene again later on.
Yeah, Catherine retrieves Van Helsing's fireworks from her clutch, because she has one of those, and uses it on the dead man guarding the room with the women in it. Those fireworks that were invented by King Theoden and the Scorpion King in 3000 BC. And so that kills him, and then elsewhere, Van Helsing and Dracula, they finally get out of the cellars, and they're in the Blood Hall, where Bathory is standing in a massive bathing pool in the center of the room. And she is surprised at Dracula's presence, but lets out a battle cry, summoning her creatures to her defense, and it mentions that they're the same ones who killed Van Helsing's parents.
Yep.
And he briefly goes into shock, and the bathing pool begins to fill with a torrent of blood.
Yeah. And then there's a line that Dracula has where it's like, I've been dead since the 1600s, it doesn't slow me down. No, 1400s, but sure, whatever.
Yeah. Well, Dracula's a prince, not a mathematician.
I guess so. I guess he's just not smart.
Except when he is smart. So Dracula takes Van Helsing's dagger, jumps into the pool to fight Bathory, and it's cutting back and forth between the two different points, but I'm just going to talk about them in order because it would be too much to talk about it as it cuts between them. But he puts up a decent fight, but eventually she beats the shit out of him again.
Okay. All right. So, oh my god, Dracula is such a bitch. He literally asked Van Helsing, hey, can you get rid of your anti-Dracula? Van Helsing says yes, and Dracula is still being whooped like a bitch. It's not even like they're evenly handed, I like to fight to do, but Bathory just whoops him. And that to me speaks okay, you now have fully powered all bets are off Dracula, ready to rumble. He's going, and she just puts him down in the dirt. Could this movie treat Dracula any more of a loser than they possibly can? Because this is the biggest possible Dracula ain't shit. We don't even like him. Bathory can beat him. Van Helsing literally just killed him earlier. He's just who cares?
They found unconventional means of attack.
Very conventional means of attack.
and so he gets most of his blood drained out. And meanwhile, Van Helsing fights off the army of monsters, and there's a thing where he runs into one of the Draugr, because this is Elder Scrolls. But no, he's like, oh shit, I don't have my vinegar bomb. And so he just shoots it in the head and kills it. Oh, bullets work.
Yeah.
And
well, to contrast what I was just complaining about with Dracula, the parts where Van Helsing is fighting off each individual monster rapidly in succession with their own weakness, chef kiss.
Yes, Dracula should put up a little more of a fight.
Yes, but the Van Helsing shredding different monsters because he's trained his whole life to study each one of their weaknesses. Oh my god, that's so good. That right there is another part of the script that, yes, that actually pays off what you set up. Good job, I'm proud, and I'm having a great time in the theater from watching that happen.
Yep, and then the fight basically ends with him running into the bear-like creature that he saw way at the beginning when he was a kid, and it's a werebear. And so he fights it, and he loses his gun, and he just has one silver bullet in his hand, so he literally hammers the silver bullet into the creature's head and kills it. That was cool. It was stupid and cool at the same time.
It is, and a lot of this movie is stupid and cool at the same time.
Yeah, and so then he sees that Dracula has lost the fight, and he sees that Bathory has dropped the dagger. He snatches it up to fight a newly clean and restored Bathory because she fucking goes from being covered in blood to clean and dressed like in seconds.
Yeah.
She's got those restoring clothes powers from the Stephen Sommers Van Helsing.
Well, speaking of that too, like the third act at this point has devolved into the exact same third act as 2017's The Moment. It's like an evil demon lady tossing around the good guy, but he's got to get the magic dagger in time, and if he doesn't get the dagger...
Oh, shit! I didn't think of that!
Throwing him into stuff over and over again until he grabs that dagger.
Yeah, she throws him, like, dick first into that one coffin.
Literally. It's like cathartic.
I didn't pick up on that being... Wow, it is the same! Only he doesn't stab himself with the dagger and control the Satan powers himself instead of being controlled by her? What the fuck?
Yeah, literally.
Whatever the fuck happened to that movie.
It feels like Kurtzman was like, oh, dude, you know what's a great idea? Do it in The Mummy too. Let's do it here.
Everybody likes seeing Tom Cruise get the shit beat out of him.
Fair enough. I do. In that movie, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And okay, so she teleports around Van Helsing, but he still manages to cut her with the blade. He goes, it worked. And Bathory is still stronger than he is and gives him a serious beating. And she very nearly kills Van Helsing, but that's when Catherine sneaks up behind her and stabs her with the dagger, getting backhanded away so hard, basically her neck breaks on the edge of the pool. And taking advantage of Bathory's disorientation, Dracula grabs her and just drains her of blood, kills her. And, I mean, he didn't want to drink her magic before, but he's okay with it now?
They implied a character arc without showing a character arc.
Yeah, he drank her powers so he can get the Windows update of his vampire power.
Literally. Even amidst all these, like, monsters and Van Helsing, the guy who was trained to fight monsters, amidst all this crazy action, the least powerful and least interesting one, Catherine, last was like, bleed for me, and takes out Bathory at the end. She gets the last laugh, oddly enough.
Yeah, weirdly. And so her body, black demonic tentacles burst from within Bathory, and they drag whatever remains of her body to hell. And her army of dead men all drop dead around the castle.
What the hell is up with the black tent? I didn't get that. What is that?
It's whatever she sold her soul to, I guess. That's inside her.
Wow, what a cool plot point you could have expanded on.
So she met Cthulhu?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it literally describes it as the octopoid eruption.
Yeah, but no, she all her dead men drop, so Phantom Menace.
God.
But at least that makes a certain amount of sense here.
Well, it's tough because, 2004's Van Helsing has it too. I can't excuse it. But the problem is, like, it's gotten to the point now where, like, when you're writing a movie or a show, you'll write in that line ahead. Like, so for example, Game of Thrones. Early on in season 6 or 7, one of the last, but if you kill the main White Walker, then all the White Army drops dead. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh my god. They wrote themselves out of a corner. They could have done this the fun way, or the most effective way, or the realistic way to get rid of by force somehow. But no, you're just going to stab the main guy. It's so frustrating. I hate it.
Yeah, and they did it here. Although at least it's explained here, but I'm not going to defend it.
Yeah, it is explained, and they explain it in 2004's Van. And
the companions are all freed from the blood bond.
Yep.
And so Van Helsing goes, "Hey, Dracula, that blood I gave you, it was filled with that tincture that I tried to use with Catherine before." And then Dracula's like, "You were counting on me to lose?"
I mean, Helsing had, like, meta knowledge of what the writers... It's like, whoa, this movie is full of Dracula being a big bitch who can't win any fight. So I guess we'll just plan for that and put this in his blood.
But that was pretty funny. And Van Helsing then sees Catherine lying on the floor dead. He tries to help her, but of course it doesn't work. And then Dracula's like, "Here, I can save her." And then he feeds her his blood until she resurrects as a vampire in spite of Van Helsing's objections. He tries to attract Dracula, only for the Count to attempt to kill him before Catherine intervenes. And she has one last moment with Van Helsing as her hunger starts to kick in. And knowing she can't stay with him, leaves with Dracula in a mingled horde of bats. But Catherine, she makes him promise not to kill him.
Yep. And then Dracula's like, I don't have to kill him because time will do it for him, and he's gonna just old and die, which is really...
Actually, not a bad line.
Yeah, it's actually kind of good. What's interesting to me is that this kind of premise, this whole crescendo with Dracula usurping Catherine from Van Helsing. Not that she was really his or anything, but like they did sleep together. But the fact that Dracula is using his immortality to lord over Van Helsing, just she's only with me now because I saved her life, and now she's kind of my thing, and she's just gonna slowly die like every human. That feels like it's so good and should have paid off the movie that should have been better prior. Like, if they had written scenes that made this moment more impactful and built to this moment, like maybe more love triangle, Dracula, Catherine, Van Helsing, stupid comedy, but like, build to this. This is such a good payoff for something I don't feel like they really earned.
This is the one scene I would have written somewhat differently.
Oh, yeah?
Because you know how Dracula says, you owe me a death?
Yep.
She should have been fine, and he should have just been like, boom, bite, dead, blood, vampire, just to fuck with Van Helsing and show he's not the good guy.
Ooh. Because I feel like at the end of this story, Van Helsing does not hate Dracula.
No, he does. He's more annoyed at him than anything.
More annoyed than anything else.
And so, here we get the ending. Van Helsing, who's alone and heartbroken, he goes and retrieves his gear. And he just loots the castle. He takes a bunch of books from the library, and he takes Bathory's jewels from her bedroom and puts them in a pillowcase. And he's actually like going through all the drawers, and he passes over her fancy clothes and her S&M gear.
Yeah, that's kind of great.
And then he lifts her, he steals her Bentley and drives off with the 3 companions in tow, because life ain't nothing but bitches and money, I guess.
I guess so.
And then it fades to black and ends, but then it fades back in for a mid-credit scene where Van Helsing returns to the offices of Ronaldo in Leeds, and Gunter answers the doorbell, and Van Helsing's got a valise with him, and he says he wants to open an account. So either he's there to deposit the money he made off of those jewels, or he's there to kill the client list.
I would say both of those answers. I would also say that based on the ending that you would rewrite, immortality is now a big deal for Van Helsing.
Yes.
So now, this is the immortality play, so he's going to look into that.
He will become Frankenstein.
He will become the Frankenstein hypothesis.
He'll become Frankenstein hypothesis. He'll become the Van Frankenstein Helsing.
What a good name. And that'll do the script. That's it.
Yeah, and I think it's a good script. Like, we fucking ripped the shit out of it for the most part, but it's fun. It's a fun read. It's more in the direction of what I think they were aiming for with Dark Universe.
Yep. I feel like this is the script that, like, what good parts are here would probably be diluted by producers.
Yeah.
Kind of like the opening scene, the second scene, where he's fighting all the vampires. It's written pretending to be like a quasi-John Wick short kind of sequence, but it would probably end up being this massive, extravagant, stupid thing that would just get really annoying.
Yeah, possibly.
I don't know. This script, I have a lot of mixed feelings on it. I'm glad that, like, it exists so that I could read any at all more Van Helsing content.
Add this to the drawer.
Add it to the drawer, yeah. But I gotta print it out. I really don't. It's not that I don't understand. I do understand. I get this script, and I know exactly what they're pretending to connect with Dracula and told it, but they can write it out very easily if the studio head was like, no, that movie's failed. They could be like, okay, write it to a different version of Dracula. Like, you paint your monsters in such a stupid light. Because now, like, I've been talking the whole time, Dracula is incompetent. Dracula fails and dies almost twice. And he doesn't win anything. He doesn't get to do anything. He shows up in his first scene he is in and then isn't. And then is upstage. And then Van Helsing almost is like a bumbling idiot, which can sure work like a Star-Lord style kind of character. But it's at different points is he experienced and at different points unsure what the hell is going on. And Catherine is very underwritten. I get her to Bathory is kind of interesting, but she's still just there to fall in love with one of the two main characters. And Jekyll's there, whatever, Darky, stupid. But it feels like more of a product than it is like an awesome movie. You know?
Yeah. And so, we basically know what happened to this movie.
Yep.
Okay, so there was one more development before The Mummy came out. There was, in 2017, they announced another writer was working on it. Now, whether he was doing this, a rewrite, or if he was doing like a page 1 rewrite or something, we don't know, but it was Dan Mazeau, whose only produced credit was Wrath of the Titans. But his unproduced work included one of the many, many, many Flash scripts. which I've never been able to get that one. And he also wrote an unproduced version of a Johnny Quest movie, which was pretty good. They announced Dan Mizzo. The Mummy comes out, bombs, and within it took them a while to announce that the universe was over, but then they threw it out. And just recently they announced that it was Julius Avery, the guy who did Overlord, was going to direct it, and he's going to be rewriting a script by Eric Pearson, the big Marvel script doctor guy.
Yep, absolutely. And it's weird in the sense that, if Van Helsing is supposed to be their Avengers, where, because Van Helsing 2004 turned him from just a vampire hunter, epic, cool monster hunter guy with guns and gadgets. If you're going to go that direction with it, wouldn't this be your big Avengers culminating moment? Why are you writing it as, the second where Dracula Untold is kind of canon, and only one other monster shows up for, a second? That's not a culmination movie at all. That's just a movie.
Were they even thinking about it along those lines? I don't know what their end game was.
I don't know. It feels like if this was... It definitely isn't supposed to be their big building, because the Mummy isn't in it. There's no monsters except just Dracula Untold, which is really funny. But if it's supposed to be just another movie, then Van Helsing isn't used as your big, house, quote, movie where everybody teams up or fights or something. I don't know. But if this isn't that, then what is that? Where are you heading?
We'll never know unless, the documentation leaks. Because I somehow doubt that any of the other, solo monster movies would have actually given much insight.
No, none. Like we were saying, like John Spates was saying, hey, yeah, that writer's room was hell. Everybody had different opinions and wanted to build the plane while they're flying it, which is the funniest line.
I'll have to look up that interview.
It came out a week ago. It just came out.
Oh, wow.
I was wrong. It's actually Eric, not John.
Okay.
It was a few months ago. I have the quote, if you'll indulge. It was a very strange experience. There was certainly a big brain trust of writers around the table. You had a lot of different voices, and none of them could agree on much. It felt much like I'd visit my relatives for Thanksgiving, and everyone's arguing with each other. You had some people saying, should our monsters all be villains in these movies? And someone else would say, we can build a plane as we fly it. And it's me and John Spates at the table going, that's a terrible analogy. On that plane, what are we doing here? And then he elaborates how, the script of Van Helsing, this is a sort of a terrible motivation, but we I don't think some of these movies are going to work at all. So what if we create the character who kills the monsters in the movie? Work.
That's amazing.
God, that's so... And then, to think that writer's room is the writer's room around 2017's The Mummy. We see that movie. What the fuck are they going to do next?
It explains so much about that movie.
Yep. There's a quote from Donna Langley, who's the chairwoman of Universal. She's the head honcho over there. She said this in February of 2020, so this is clearly years after The Mummy came out.
So closer to The Invisible Man.
Close, yeah, right around then. And somebody asked her in an interview, hey, that. And she was like, we had an attempt at interlocking our monsters, and it was a failed attempt. What we realized is, certainly the world was not asking for a shared universe of monsters. That, to me, is so misguided.
Because it's really disappointing that of all the things that 2017's The Mummy gave us, the worst one is that Universal learned the wrong lesson, which is to say that, it's the case of Eric Andre shooting Hannibal Buress and going, how could this have happened? You know that meme where he's like, oh, who did this? And he did it. It's The Mummy was awful. Critics hated it, audiences hated it, and it bombed. It didn't make much. So, no matter how you judge it, it failed. And the lesson you're taking away from making that bad movie is that nobody wants a shared universe of monsters. People want a good movie. I would kill for a reimagining of the Universal monsters, but if they're all of the same quality of the 2017 Mummy, you bet your ass they're gonna fail. No one's gonna go see those movies, and it's your fault.
Look at The Invisible Man from 2020. That was massive. Critics loved it, audiences loved it, and it got hit with COVID halfway through, but it still made absolute bank notwithstanding. And if you did a shared universe with movies like that, and eventually cross them over, you'll print money with them.
I don't...
You don't think so?
Here's my thing is, I don't know if I would want to see a sequel to The Invisible Man without The Invisible Man still in it.
Maybe. But the writing team behind that movie did so well with that movie.
But I don't know how are you going to make it scary again when it's, I don't want to spoil the movie.
Yeah, fair, but I would argue that there's a little... You could probably twist into, maybe she's more of the anti-hero. Maybe the monsters are being hunted by her.
She's hunting Ryan Gosling's Wolfman.
Yeah, literally, or turns into Dwayne Johnson's Wolfman. But the reason I was so on about that quote is because them saying that, oh, people don't want that, is because they're of the belief that the shared monster universe model is a failure and will fail no matter what. So we're gonna have to wait like another 10 or 20 years when management should see the next attempt, because I don't think they're gonna do anything anytime soon.
What people ignore is that there are shared universes that worked outside of Marvel.
Right.
Granted, love or hate the movies, the Conjuring universe has been a success.
It has. Those movies did make a lot of money, and one of those reasons, and this is key, is because they're horror, so they're cheap. Invisible Man cost like $10 million, and it made over 100, I think more than that.
Which is easy when your villain is an empty door.
Empty door villain, yeah!
I love how that movie makes panning over to a doorway scary.
Terrifying! I think that's more terrifying than every Invisible Man movie.
Van Helsing.
Yeah, on that note, I've been Jake of Hot Quality Content Fan. Catch us at youtube.com/hotqualitycontent. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. Monetize the channel. We get to do so many more things when that happens. And check out KiramidHead.
Yeah, you can check me out wherever the hell you're already listening to my stuff at.
Pretty much.
All right, and with that, guys, where's your sense of adventure?
And out. Boom.